This isn't your usual Naruto. This is Naruto Uzumaki dying in the flames, only to be reborn from them. Legend says a creature that dies in fire is reborn in fire. Naruto is about to find out that the legend was never about some mythical beast. It was about him. The Valley of the End becomes his funeral. Fire becomes his rebirth. And when Naruto rises again, he doesn't come back as the same boy. He comes back with the power to change, the power to heal, and the power of the phoenix. The village thought Naruto was dead. They were right. The thing that came back is something entirely different. Chapter 9. 4 days later at Suna, one Hitaki Kakashi was standing in front of the Kazekage in his ABNU uniform and said, "Thank you for seeing me, Kazekage-sama." The Kazekage said, "Of course, ABNU. So what do I owe the pleasure of your visit? Has something happened that the Hokage needs to draw to my attention?" Kakashi said, "Honestly, I don't know. I was given a mission to deliver a scroll to you and wait for a response." As he holds out a scroll, the Kazekage looked at it and said, "Very well." And he takes the scroll, opening it, and begins reading it. After a few moments he puts the scroll down and looked at it a few minutes and said, "I will arrive at that time to allow a meeting. Correspondence will be allowed and I accept the gift he has given. I will also not mention it to anyone besides my family. Tell him that I agree to his stipulations." Kakashi nodded and said, "I will tell him when I see him." Kakashi started to leave and the Kazekage said, "You don't know what delivered, do you?" Kakashi stopped and turned and said, "No, Kazekage-sama." The Kazekage said, "Tell me, ABNU, do you know this Kazama?" Kakashi stiffened and said, "A little, sir. My duties keep me away from the village mostly." The Kazekage nodded and said, "Do you know if he is a good person?" Kakashi blinked behind his mask and said, "I believe so." The Kazekage said, "Good. Dismiss and safe journey." Kakashi nodded and left, heading for his next destination. Back in Konoha the next day, Anko was walking through the forest of death, holding the locket she received earlier this week when she felt some chakra coming from inside the forest. Deciding to investigate, she quickly used her stealth to travel deep into the forest to the side farthest from the village but also the most dangerous. She followed the chakra source for about half an hour, and when she arrived at an area she felt the source from, she was shocked because of the sight that greeted her. Over 500 cagebunshins were waterwalking and running up and down trees. She recognized the cagebunshins as the Kyuubi kid. Suddenly she saw something fall into the clearing and destroy a couple of clones that were balancing on Kunias. She looked up and nearly had a heart attack. Sitting in the trees was a huge mansion. She made sure she was concealed and held her chakra as low as possible as she looked around. She watched and soon saw one of the clones that was different. She looked at it and watched as 25 new cagebunshins appeared around that one. She then watched as the 25 clones changed into different people and take up different fighting stances. She saw one of herself in the group and became confused as she watched herself get into the serpent stance. The one she noticed was different before got into a fighting stance she did not recognize, and then the 25 clones that were people she knew or did not know began to fight. The battle was deadly. The techniques she saw them use was something she never would have expected. The one of Asuma used trench knives and even had a wind affinity. The one of Kakashi surprised her the most as it used Chidori. Kurenai used the Treebind of Death. Hyatt used the Crescent Moon style of sword fighting. Her clone used the Hidden Snake Hand. She watched the battle as each and every move was countered by the Naruto she assumed now was the real one. She then got a surprise that she would never have dreamed. The kid used the 4th prize Jutsu Rasengan and Hiraishin. Even though she had never actually seen them, she had read enough about them to know that's what they were. She watched as some of the weaker fighters were taken out. The guy clone and a mini version of him she could have sworn opened the gates. The kid was receiving wounds but kept on fighting. A clone of Itachi said something that made Anko puzzled. "I will kill you, Kyuubi, just like I killed my clan." Soon the 25 clones that had started were down to 2. Anko looked at the 2 and were surprised by who they were. What happened next made her blood run cold. The 2 clones that was standing there were Tsunade and Jiraiya. Another clone appeared and this time Orochimaru stood there. She listened as his clone began to speak. "Kukukukuk Naruto-kun, I see you are still too weak to kill me. How can you hope to protect the women you love from me?" Naruto looked at him and his eyes changed red and said, "I will kill you, Orochimaru. I will do it for all the people's lives you have ruined and are planning on ruin. But most of all I will stop you for Saraheim." And Naruto suddenly jumped onto a tree branch and grabbed the tree branch, causing it to attack Orochimaru. Anko, who saw all of this, was frozen in place. She then heard the other two Sannin clones speak. Naruto, why do you fight for a village that curses the day you were born? Tsunade said. Jiraiya said, come on kid. Do you really think with everything you do you will ever find happiness in this village? Naruto said, shut up grandfather. I heard it from you before. And you grandmother. First putting dad up for adoption just to keep from upsetting the Hokage. Please, you claim it was for his protection, but I know the truth. Then never telling him who you were. I lived most of my lives alone, and that pain is impossible to understand. The loneliness of not knowing if you even had a family and then find out one is out writing books and the other gambles and drinks. I swear when I restore my clan I will not only love my wives but my children. And he charged all three Sannins, attacking each as they used their individual skills. Anko's breath was caught in her throat as she watched him stand toe-to-toe with the Sannins. She gasped when she saw her former master use a ceiling on his stomach. What happened next would forever be in her memory. Naruto slowly stood up and looked at Orochimaru and said, too late Orochimaru. You can't seal what's not there. Kyuubi's been dead for a long time now. Now join him. And Naruto flamed Shushin around the battlefield, attacking from different areas. Sadly, all of the Sannins still stood strong. Finally, Naruto fell to the ground face first. He rolled himself over but just laid there and passed out. Anko was about to jump down, but something she heard earlier made her stop. But most of all, I will stop you for Saraheim. She then thought of the flame Shushin attacks he used and the controlling the trees. This Gaki was the one who'd been flirting with her and Kurenai. She started to get angry at that until she heard him still on the ground speak. I'm trying Saraheim. You told me you liked white roses and I already got your locket for you. I will get strong enough to protect you from him. At least I have not screwed this life yet. I hope everything works out. I'm getting tired of repeating lives. You still look beautiful to me. Senseiheim also. I know the old man is already suspicious of me, but I don't care. He did not trust me before, so why should he trust me now? You always have such good advice, Saraheim. First you tell me to learn about all the women I would like to live my life with. I tried that and found 3 goddesses that I would be honored to grow old with. There's you and Senseiheim, and then there's Tamaraheim. It sucks being this young Aegean. I have the body of an almost 6-year-old but the mind of someone many years older. I gave up a long time ago keeping track. Well, I guess I better get started, Aegean. I will be glad to be a genuine Aegean so I can finally show you my true self. I hope you're safe and happy, my Heims. And he got up and started to walk toward a tree to get back to his house, only to pass out and all of his clones disappear. Anko stood in place where she was as she listened to him. She was thinking Kyuubi's dead. Grandfather, grandmother, repeating lives. What the hell is going on? Anko looked around and saw Naruto was still passed out and jumped out of her hitting spot and walked over, picking the kid up, and then climbing up to the mansion and walked inside and nearly dropped Naruto right then and there. The sight that greeted her was amazing. She looked around and saw a couch and put Naruto down on it. She then started to look around. She saw pictures of herself older than she is now with different people. She saw a picture of Tsunade and Jiraiya with some kid who looked like Naruto, and after seeing the whiskers she was sure was him. She saw the same thing with Kurenai with what looked like a genin team. She soon found a similar picture of Naruto in an orange jumpsuit with a pink-haired girl and what looked like an Uchiha and Kakashi. Anko said, "Do you ever show your face, Kakashi, and what the hell is with the orange jumpsuit?" Practically screams, "Kill me." A voice from the couch said, "No, he doesn't, and the jumpsuit is all the stores would allow me to buy, Anko. They do after all want the Kyuubi brat to die." Anko turned and saw Naruto sitting up slowly. He turned to her looking down and said, "So how much did you see?" Anko looked at him and said, "Everything from the Battle Royal to the Sannenfest, and I heard you afterwards." Naruto sighed and turned slowly and said, "I guess you got questions and want answers." Anko said, "You can say that, but I am not the only one." Naruto nodded and said, "Do you think you can find this place, Aegean?" Anko said, "Yeah, why?" Naruto sighed and said, "Tonight 7 o'clock. Bring Kurenai and the Hokage. Don't tell them what it's about, but make sure you're not followed. I will make dinner and answer everything." Anko said, "Why should I believe you, Gaki?" Naruto said, "I will remove your curse seal." Anko was stunned, and Naruto slowly got up and winced as he was still hurt from the spar and walked over to her and said, "Also, I always keep my promises, even when they kill me." Anko seemed to think it over and said, "All right, Gaki. I will trust you for now. And she disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto sighed and said, damn it. I was not ready for this. And began preparing for tonight. Anko arrived back inside the village and went to the Hokage office. When she arrived, she saw the Hokage sitting in his chair, but a man she recognized as Uchiha Itachi was standing there. Anko knocked and Itachi turned and said, hello Anko, how are you today? Anko said, fine. A flash of what the Itachi clone said made her nervous a little. If Naruto really did know the future as she suspected, then Itachi would kill the Uchiha clan. She filed that away for later. The Hokage said, Itachi, I want you to see if you can find Naruto. You have the best chance with your tracking abilities. Anko said, actually sir, that's what I came here to tell you. I saw him today and he wants to talk to you later today. The third said, really, and where did you see him? Anko remembered the Genin team picture of Naruto and saw the memorial stone, so she said, I saw him on a training ground near the memorial stone, and he asked me to relay the message. The third nodded and said, never mind Itachi. Thank you anyways. Itachi nodded and said, of course Hokage-sama. And he left in a leaf shin. Anko sighed and the third said, so why did you lie? Anko said, I really did meet him but not where I said. I saw and heard some things today that has me questioning Itachi loyalty. That's why I lied. Naruto said he wanted you, me and Kurenai at his mansion tonight at 7. The third blinked and said, mansion? What mansion? Anko said, he built a mansion inside the forest of death. The third chuckled and said, no wonder we could not find him. Anko nodded and said, there is something else. He said, Kyuubi's dead and the seal's gone. The third paled and coughed at this and said, anything else? Anko said, I think the rest should wait until tonight. I would tell your family you won't be home till late because I think this is going to be a long night. The third nodded and said, why are you so open about this, Anko? You hardly trust anyone, and the fact you are basically putting all your faith in Naruto is something I have never seen before. Anko thought for a moment and said, I seen that kid do something even I could not do. The third said, and that is? Anko said, you will have to see for yourself. The third said, right, I will meet you at the tower at the Forest of Death at 6:30. Anko turned to leave and stopped and said, I have a personal request, Hokage-sama. The third looked at her and motioned for her to continue. Anko said, don't tell anyone about where we are meeting or have anyone follow us. The kid seems like he's been betrayed more times than I have and his trust is only so far. The third sighed and said, I understand. Finding out what he did will do that. Anko nodded and left to find Kurenai. Anko found Kurenai at the hot springs. When she got there, she decided to relax also. After getting undressed, she went into the water and sat by Kurenai. Kurenai said, I thought you would be training today. Anko said, I was until I met our mutual friend today. Kurenai blinked and said, really? Did you find out anything? Hana Inazaka, a genin, said, really Kurenai and Anko? You both have a guy you both like. Who is he? Kurenai said, it's not like that. This guy is playing the whole mysterious person thing and has been flirting with both of us. Anko said, he wants to meet us tonight at 7. The two other women besides Hana and the two Heims looked at them and Hana said, really? So where does he plan to meet you? Anko said, I found his home and he is going to prepare dinner for us and tell us everything we want to know. Kurenai looked at Anko and said, exactly how did you find him, Anko? Anko said, I found him when he was destroying a training grounds. The Gaki could probably beat most of the village if he really wanted to. Kurenai sighed and said, learn anything new about him? Anko smirked and said, I saw what he really looks like. Kurenai sat straight up, shocking everyone, and said, tell me. Anko shook her head no and said, I will tell you this. Don't let your first impression fool you. Kurenai sighed and said, I hate your cryptic games. Anko said, meet me at my place at 6:15. Kurenai said, but you said he wanted to see us at 7. Anko said, you will find out why later. And got up to leave. Hana looked at Anko and said, are you going to tell us anything else? Anko placed her hand on the locket and said, nope. And turned to leave. Kurenai sighed and Hana said, details. Kurenai cursed Anko and said, all I really can tell you is that he says he has admired us both for some time and that he is a good kisser. Hana said, and how do you know that? Kurenai blushed and said, I saw who I thought was a sumo walk into an ally and I went to flirt like we sometimes do. Turned out it was this mysterious guy in an advanced henge that can't be dispelled. Trust me, I tried. He has shown up in 3 different disguises and has sent us flowers and recovered that locket Anko said Orochimaru threw into that ravine near here. Hana said, sounds like he is going all out to impress you both. Kurenai said, seems like it, though I wonder why he really is hiding who he is. Hana said, perhaps it's someone who was too shy to tell you. Kurenai said, maybe. As she relaxed thinking about later. Later that evening at 6:30 Anko and Kurenai arrived at the tower in the Forest of Death and Kurenai said, what are we doing here, Anko? Anko said, we are meeting his other guest. Kurenai said, who? The third walked up from behind them and said, that would be me. Kurenai said, Hokage-sama. Surprised. He smiled at her and said, shall we, Anko? Anko nodded and began leading them to Naruto's home. When the 3 arrived at the mansion, the sun was just setting and they could still see the place. Kurenai and the third were in awe by the place and Anko was a little but not as much as originally. The mansion was 2 stories tall and could probably hold 50 people comfortably. After they climbed the tree, they walked to the front door and it opened and a man in a butler suit was standing there. The third chuckled at this and said, that has got to be the second best way to use cage bunshin I have ever seen. The butler said, of course, Hokage-sama. Paperwork is the best way. The third said, indeed, and thanks for the tip. Now might I inquire as to where our host is? The butler said, he will be down in moments and dinner will be ready shortly. He left orders to see if you needed any drinks and said to make yourself at home. The third nodded and Anko said, I think before he gets here you should look at his pictures in the living room. Might make what he says more believable. Kurenai and the third shot her a confused look and followed her into the living room. Looking around raised several questions for both the third and Kurenai. The butler returned a few minutes later and said, dinner is served and your host is waiting on you. They all nodded and followed the clone into a dining room and 2 more butlers were there and pulled out the chairs for Anko and Kurenai. A voice from behind them said, I'm glad you arrived safely and I know you 3 have many questions. I promise you I won't lie about anything. And the 15-year-old version of Naruto arrived wearing a pair of black pants and a white dress shirt. The third looked at him and said, why are you still in a henge, Naruto? Naruto said, I will explain that, but I would like to tell you my story. Kurenai said, Naruto, as in Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto sighed and said, yes and no Senseiheim. Kurenai said, what do you mean? Naruto said, my real name is Naruto Kazama, and I am the son of Erashur Kazama, the Yondaime Hokage. I am also the grandson of Tsunade and Jiraiya of the Sanins. I may look like I am only 6 years old, but I am a lot older than that. The third said, what do you mean, Naruto? Naruto took a sip of wine and said, when I was dying from a Chidori from my teammate Sasuke Uchiha after he defected from the village to go to Orochimaru, the Shinigami came and was going to take me to the other side. Kyuubi would have been released because we had not merged enough to drag his soul to the other side. I was 13 at the time. Kyuubi made a deal with the Shinigami and he accepted it. I would be given one of the heavenly powers of the Phoenix and allowed to go back to the age of 5 and try to correct the mistakes that were made in my life by myself and others. Kyuubi gave me all of his power also as part of the deal. Each time I go back I keep all the knowledge I gain and I have tried many things to fix the mistakes. Everyone was stunned by this and the third said, I find that hard to believe, Naruto, and also the fact of what you said about Kyuubi also is hard to believe. Naruto raised his shirt and channeled chakra and said, you and I both know, old man, that the Kyuubi seal would always show up even through a henge, and as you can see I don't have it. It does not matter if you believe me or not. It's the truth. Anyways, I will answer some question, but certain things have to happen that can't be changed or all my knowledge is basically useless. Kurenai said, what do you mean? Naruto sighed and said, a tragedy will befall Konoha within a month and I could tell you who will do it and why, but it has to happen. I have tried every way to stop it, but it always either results in even more deaths or the entire city going into a civil war. Anyways, Saraheim, show me your curse seal. Anko nodded and pulled her shirt to the side a little, and the third said, what are you going to do, Naruto? Naruto walked behind her and said, removing it, and placed his hand over her curse seal and started to channel demon chakra into it, and Anko screamed out in pain, but the pain soon was replaced with pleasure as Naruto then hit the same pressure point he hit on Kurenai and made Anko have pleasure like never imagined, and the seal burned away, only leaving a scar. Naruto walked over and sat down and said, I am sorry for tricking you Senseiheim and Saraheim, but if you would have known I was a kid you would have ignored me flat out on principle, and I wanted to try and show you both I do care about you. The third said, what was the 2 scrolls Kakashi went to deliver? Naruto snickered and said, one was to try and work things out with the third person I wrote to the lovely ladies here about as a possible relationship with. I sent a potential political marriage and all, but I set it up where it's all her choice. The third nodded and said, do I need to worry about anything concerning this? Naruto said, you will receive scrolls from Suna that will need to be sent to me. Other than that, not until my age group's Chunin exams. The third said, and the other one? Naruto smiled and said, family reunion. Kurenai said, what do you mean? Naruto said, I want him to come train me and we are going to look for Tsunade. I will be back in time for my age group graduation. The third said, you know I have to authorize that. Naruto said, actually you don't. I am a clan member and you can't interfere with clan business. Also, as one of the founding clans of Konoha, I have the right to leave the village anytime I please, so even if I were a ninja of the village, I could not be considered a missing nin unless my clan said I was or I did so in an action that could be considered hostile. Also, I should state something. I own everything from the South Gate to the Hokage Mountain, and all the way to the Academy as ordered by the charter of this village. That was the second reason I built my home here. The other is only skilled ninja could find it and make it to it. Kurenai said, what? Do you mean you own the entire village that way? Naruto said, yes. The laws of Konoha says any land that is assigned to a clan that was a founder of Konoha owns that land and can never be sold, given, or taken by the council, citizens, or Hokage. Even if someone puts homes or buildings on those lands, they own them also. My family, the family of the first, wanted the village to grow, so while other clans held their lands, mine allowed homesteaders to set up on our land to build the village. The only clan besides mine that is affected by this is the Hyuga and Uchiha. They own basically a triangle from where their 2 lands meet and end and go to the academy where they run into mine. The other clans have kept exactly what they were given. No more and no less. The third said, what do you plan to do about that, Naruto? Naruto said, absolutely nothing unless the village hurts my family or friends. The third sighed and said, thank you for not getting revenge. Naruto chuckled and Anko said, what? Naruto said, in my last life I did do something just for the hell of it. I placed a genjutsu on the Hokage Mountain and had the Hokages lip sync to some songs, while I danced throughout the street in only my boxers and a pimp hat and cane to I'm Too Sexy. I also beat Kakashi during our genin test to the song Kung Fu Fighting, and then the council tried to kill me, so I basically told every single one of them off as only I could and even made Danzo, that fucking traitor, piss his pants. I never had so much fun. Ah well. Everyone imagined that, and Anko and Kurenai blushed a little and the third chuckled and said, I wish I could have seen that, and what do you mean Danzo a traitor? Naruto sighed and said, he supplies Orochimaru with information on individual ninja. Mission status, skill levels, teammates. I know he does it to the Rookie 9 and Guy's team. Before that I don't know. If I had not caught his son Sai giving the info I would never have believed it. Anyways, you should also know that the council can't kill, get rid of or hurt me anymore, as I am the current clan head of my family and I also have at least 4 different seats on the council. Kurenai said, what do you mean? Naruto said, all Hokage and descendants of Hokages have 1 seat given to them, so I have 3 from the 1, 2, and 4th Hokage. As a founding clan I also have 1 seat, and as the grandson of Jiraiya, as he is the last of his clan who has a permanent seat on the council. Now I know Tsunade will be Hokage, so her seat will be open, and until Jiraiya dies he will have his, so that means the other 4 are mine and whoever I have as my wives, since I have a bloodline and also a clan I have to have more than 1 wife. I found 3 that I hope someday to earn the right to marry, but my plans changed when Anko found me today. I will understand if either you Senseiheim or Saraheim do not want me now that you know the truth, but I ask that I can write you while I am away and at least let me earn your friendship. I will tell you this. I have never been past a kiss with any woman. I am saving myself for a true marriage, so you don't think I am just trying to get with you for that. And the pressure point I hit, I learned from Tsunade how to manipulate the massage points I learned in Cortesian classes. Kurenai blinked and said, what the hell were you taking a kunoichi only class? Naruto smirked and said, sexy no jutsu. And he changed into a beautiful blonde hair woman in a dress and said, I have busted a few slave and prostitution rings before. In a silky female voice before turning back to his hinged male form. Kurenai blinked and Anko said, how exactly could you do that if it's just a henge? Naruto smirked and said, do any of you know why you can't dispel my henges? Kurenai said, I have actually wondered that. Naruto said, it's because of Kyuubi's influence on my body. Even though he's gone, I have his power, so when I use the advanced henge, I actually become what you see. My female version actually is completely female. Hormones and all. God, I hated periods. Everyone blinked and blinked Aegean, and the third had to ask, does that mean you could become pregnant? Naruto said, Tsunade thought so when I volunteered to go in with Ino to bust a prostitution ring. She made take the classes and even taught me about protection and birth control. It gave me a new respect for women. Enko said, Gaki, why the hell would you want to be female anyways? Naruto said, my first version was nude so I could knock out perverts. In fact, it was that technique that made me a genin in the first place. I was tricked by Mizuki to steal the Forbidden Skull, and I knocked out the Hokage with it, and I learned Kage Bunshin in a few hours. I still have trouble with simple Bunshins because my reserves are so big. Nobody ever taught me chakra control exercises, so I never learned to control it until 2 months into me being a genin. The third said, how much of the scroll do you know? Naruto said, if you're worried about the sealing that dad did, I know it, but as I am a seal master, also I have made my own seals that make it look like a simple exploding note. The third paled, and Naruto said, I know 22 of the 23 techniques on it and can do 21 of them. I never did learn the bloodline sealer because if you do it to anyone after 1 year old, it kills them. I never learned it, so I would never be tempted to use it on Itachi or Sasuke. The one I learned but never tried to do was the sealing dad did. So, will you allow me a chance to write you both at least? Kurenai sat quietly and said, I will give you a chance for my friendship, but anything past that I won't promise anything. Anko said, you got my friendship Gaki when you got my locket. I do have one question though. Does the tragedy you mentioned earlier have anything to do with Itachi? Everyone saw Naruto flinch and he said, yes. The third said, what is going to happen? Naruto sighed and said, it can't be stopped, so don't try. Itachi will kill his best friend. 2 days later, he wipes out the Uchiha clan, leaving one survivor besides himself. His little brother Sasuke. The third said, why would he do that? Naruto closed his eyes and said, do any of you know what the Manjikyu Sharingan is? Anko and Kurenai both shook their head no, but the third sighed and said, I see. Naruto said, there are only 2 ways to get it, and I only know 2 people who have gotten it. Each from a different way. The third said, I thought there was only one way. Naruto said, Kakashi finds another way, but I never learned how. The third said, I should find a way to stop him. Naruto said, you can't. It has to happen to save the rest of the village. The third looked at Naruto and said, what do you mean? Naruto said, Itachi will leave the village and join a group of S-class missing nins that has already approached him offering membership into their organization. Nobody, and I mean nobody in this village, can currently stand up to the 2 of the members of them. The third said, how can you be sure, Naruto? Naruto said, how can you hope to stop the man that killed the first Hokage, and also Uchiha Madara, the first Uchiha? Everyone stopped and eating the salad that was on the table and looked at Naruto. The third said, how can either of those 2 men still be alive? Naruto sighed and said, Kakuzu has a bloodline ability that lets him live as long as he has a heart that still lives. He has 5 of them. If one dies, he can kill someone and replace his heart and gain their chakra affinity. In the future, Shikamaru killed 1 heart by tricking Kakuzu partner. Kakashi killed 1 heart with a Chidori, and I killed 3 hearts with a Raise Shuriken Jutsu, which is a Rasengan with wind manipulation added to it. Currently, I can't use it because it's too demanding on me. Uchiha Madara is another story altogether. You all know how the Uchiha were once Hyuga's right. Everyone nodded and Naruto said, he was a branch house member that wanted to be free of them, so he ran, and as luck would unfortunately have it, he was the cause of my life being hell. Anko said, what do you mean? Naruto said, when he ran, he discovered Kyuubi's den. He offered Kyuubi a deal, and Kyuubi altered his bloodline to give him the Sharingan, freeing him from the Hyuga family, but he was greedy also since he wanted to rub it in the face of the Hyugas. Guess what the deal was? Nobody answered, and Naruto said, in exchange for the bloodline and the Manjikyu Sharingan. A way to overpower Hyugas, he would give 100 of his descendants to Kyuubi as payment. However, Kyuubi knew mortals did not live long lives, and he knew that Madara would die before the deal was made, so he cursed him and made him a half-demon. He would live up to 1,000 years to see that his clan repaid its debt. He was also given that long in case his clan died and he could start over. That's why Kyuubi attacked. He came to collect his debt. However, Madara has become insane and wants even more power. He has discovered a way to become a 10-tailed demon, the first ever. If he can capture the other 1 to 9-tailed demons, he will be able to become completely immortal. To do this, he created the organization Itachi will join. With Kyuubi dead, he can't do it, but he does not know that and gives me an advantage to stop him. The third said, so you are going to let Itachi go so you can stop him and this group later. Naruto said, yes. I told you I have had many lives. In all my lives, I have never made it past the age of 18. Either the Leaf Village is destroyed, in a never-ending civil war, or in another great shinobi war. Itachi has to kill his clan so Orochimaru will come during my Chunin exams after Sasuke. If I can take out Orochimaru, then a month later I can take out 2 more members of this group. One being Itachi. I can then pick the other 7 members off until I get to Madara and I can defeat him. The only way to kill him is to completely destroy every cell of his body. The third said, can you defeat him? Naruto said, the last time events lead to us meeting it came out a draw. I hope I can change just enough to beat him this time. I opened 6 celestial gates and dropped all my gravity and chakra weights and also 5 tails of Kyuubi's chakra for 2 minutes. For that 2 minutes, it killed him, but because my body was so damaged from it, I would have lived my life as a cripple. I stopped my healing and let my body die so I could start over. The third sighed and said, can you tell us any more about what's going to happen? Naruto said, no. I would like to, but they would change things too much. That's why I am leaving the village, so I won't change things here too much. Let the Uchiha massacre play out and act normal until I return to take my Genin test. Just make sure you put me on the Genin team with Sasuke and Sakura under Kakashi. The third said, why should I listen to you or believe you for that matter? Naruto sighed and said, you told me this when I tried other stuff so you would listen. A monkey will climb higher to avoid a snake. Even with a frog and a snail's help, he may not climb fast enough. A fox can kill the snake, but only with the strength of a snail, the agility of a frog, and the wisdom of a monkey. Everyone was looking at him, and the third sighed and said, damn it. There is no way you could know that saying even if it is changed. Naruto blinked and Anko asked what was it changed from. The third said, instead of a fox it was a mongoose that could kill a snake. Only person who knows that saying is dead and has been for years. The first told it to me when I told him my plans for the Saiyans and he died a few hours later, so he could not have told anyone it or wrote it down. Very well. I will believe you on this, but I don't like it. Naruto nodded and a butler brought a scroll over and Naruto said, I want you 3 to put a drop of blood on this scroll. Anko asked why. Naruto said, it will give you access to this place after I leave. Anyone who tries to enter after the Genjutsu seals are on will be sent to the Hokage Mountain. I have scrolls of every jutsu I know with the exception of Rasengan and Hiraishin no Jutsu in my library. It's down the right hallway off the main living room. Can't miss it. There are a little over 11,000 jutsu from all the elements as well as medical and Genjutsu. I give you all permission to look at them and learn them, but don't try to read my journals. I put my personal thoughts on stuff in them, and if anyone but a blood relation tries to open them, it will kill them. Also, don't teach any of those jutsu to anyone until I come back. Kakashi will also be allowed access, but only you 4. The third said, that's more jutsu than the entire Leaf Village. How did you get so many? Naruto said, you know how Kagebunshin learn everything you do and vice versa. Well, I had Kagebunshin break into several other villages' libraries and memorizes them, as well as spent time among missing nin in other lives to learn them. It makes me more adaptable and a better ninja. The third nodded and a few clones brought out a plate with a Parmesan chicken and some white rice with a bottle of champagne. The champagne was opened and everyone got a glass and enjoyed the food before Naruto said, I hope I answered some of your questions. Kurenai said, yes, but we have more. Naruto nodded and said, then that will give us a chance to write each other. I will have a summon check with the Hokage once a month to pick up any scrolls and deliver them so he can know how we are doing or if something important is about to happen or happens he needs to know about. Also, you all should know that only you 3 and Kakashi know who I really am, but he does not know him from a different life or anything like that, so don't tell him. I don't want him to depend on me when I have to hold back. The third sighed as he sat his wine down and said, I'm getting too old for this. Naruto smiled and said, I'm sorry Aegean for being so mysterious and all, but it has to be this way for now. I will be taking my real name by the end of the Chunin exams, so do what you think is wise about that old man. Anko said, you said Orochimaru will be coming for Sasuke. Why? Naruto said, I have said too much already, so please don't ask me that. I will say this. The only reason I could remove your curse seal, Anko, is because you do not want it. If someone does want it, then I can't remove it. Also, I should tell you he has spies in this village. Some even I don't know. I do know who his main one is, but I can't do anything about him until later. Kurenai said, what are you really after, Naruto? Why live all these lives and work so hard like you say you have? Naruto looked at her and each of his other guests and sighed as he dropped his henge, showing the real Naruto, who said in a voice that you could hear was older than time and loneliness that no one could comprehend this Senseiheim. I want to be able to be me. Everyone already has ideas of me. Even you in Saraheim when you imagined why I hid who I am. I want to be the real me. Not somebody who has to hide himself from the world. Who can't show feelings to those he cares about or show how smart he is afraid the village would kill him for it. I want to be able to relax around people who actually care for you. I want to be able to show the world the real me and have a family who will look on at me with pride and love. That's why I do this. If you will excuse me, but it's getting late. Enjoy your evening. And he got up and bowed to them, and the three butlers in the room walked behind each person, and they were consumed in flames, appearing back at their own homes, and the butlers went up in a puff of smoke. That night, four people had very little sleep, thinking of everything that they seen or heard or told. It had been a week now since Kakashi had officially returned to Fire Country. He had been in 3 towns so far and had yet to find who he was looking for. Today, however, was a different matter. He had not found Jiraiya, but Kakashi found someone who might just be as good. In front of him was an old friend of his, and he knew she was never alone. He walked up and said, "Hello, Shizune." Shizune spun around and said, "Kakashi, is that you?" Kakashi nodded and said, "Yeah, it's me. How you doing?" Shizune said, "Fine, why?" Kakashi said, "I was looking for someone, but when I saw you, I thought I would check up on an old friend." Shizune said, "Who are you looking for?" Kakashi said, "I was looking for Jiraiya. I got a mission from someone I thought was dead, and he wants me to deliver a scroll to him." Shizune said, "Who's that?" Kakashi said, "Sensei's son, Naruto Kazama. I just found out recently that the third changed his name because of his father's enemies." Shizune was shocked and said, "Arashi's kid is alive." Kakashi nodded and said, "I was hoping that maybe you or Tsunade might have seen Jiraiya, since he is always following you both for his research." Shizune turned red from anger and embarrassment and said, "About 2 weeks ago near Ritsar City." Kakashi nodded and said, "I can't believe Sensei's son's been in front of me the whole time and never knew it." Shizune said, "What name did the third give him, Kakashi?" Kakashi looked around and said, "Naruto Uzumaki. Too bad the village never saw him as the hero Sensei wanted. I got to go. Thanks for the info." And he jumped away, heading toward Ritsar City. Shizune walked back toward where her master was, not seeing the smirk Kakashi had behind his mask. Though Naruto did not tell Kakashi that he was Tsunade's grandson, he knew because of a certain stealth mission Erasure had his team do. They broke into the hospital record office and compared blood types to find out who his parents were. He never told them because he wanted to prove himself on his own. Kakashi, as he jumped from tree to tree, thought to himself, "I hope this starts to repay you for not being there for you, godson." Shizune walked into the casino and was shocked by what she saw. Tsunade had a huge pile of money she had won. She walked over and said, "Tsunade, how did you win?" Tsunade said, "Something bad is going to happen to me soon." Shizune said, "I hope you're wrong. I just ran into Kakashi." Tsunade bet all her money and won Aegean and said, "What's old one eye up to?" Shizune watched her master bet it all Aegean and cringed and said, "He just told me something that made me happy and upset at the same time." Tsunade won Aegean and put it all on the line and said, "What's that?" Shizune said, "You remember Naruto Uzumaki?" Tsunade nodded and won even more, and she placed it all on one hand. She had close to 10 million on the line. Shizune said, "Kakashi told me that's not his real name. It's Kazama and he's Arashi's son." Busted. Tsunade not only lost all her money, her chair she was sitting in broke, and when she tried to stop her fall, she accidentally had the table break in the middle, sending all the money into the air. A glass of shitty-smelling beer flew up and landed on her head, and some old gumless dealer fell right in between her breast. Shizune looked shocked at the damage, and then the owner of the casino came over demanding she pay for all the damage. Tsunade said, "I just knew something bad was going to happen." And she got up and grabbed Shizune and dragged her as fast as she could away. When they had been running for about half an hour, Tsunade stopped and turned to Shizune and said, "Tell me everything that Kakashi said." Shizune, never seeing her master like this before, started saying everything. Tsunade at the end was looking out across the lake and said, "We're going to Konoha." Shizune said, "But Tsunade, you said you would never go back. Why now?" Tsunade said, "I need to see my grandson." As she walked off, ignoring the shocked face of Shizune as she began walking toward Konoha. Naruto had been busy the week since he had guessed for dinner. He had been finishing the seals on his home, getting supplies ready for his trip when Jiraiya arrived, training and avoiding the three he told so he could clear his head. Today we find Naruto walking toward a surgeon shop to get something remade. He forgot to seal something in a dimension pocket when he was torturing Kabuto. The memory of that brought a smile to his face. He walked into the Wolfclaw weapon shop disguised with black hair and green eyes and walked to the counter and said, "I was wondering if you could make something for me." The man behind the counter said, "Most likely stranger. The name's Dustin and I'm the owner. What can I do for you today?" Naruto pulled out a scroll and said, "I need that sword made and this vial of blood put in it." As he handed not only the scroll but a tube of blood. Dustin opened the scroll up and looked at it before whistling and said, "Yeah, I can make it, but it will take at least a week and it would cost 2 million to do. I would have to cancel all other jobs to do it." Naruto pulled out a scroll and unsealed some money and said, "Either I or someone for me will come by to get it then. If it's not me, ask for the password and it's Phoenix." Dustin nodded and Naruto left and went around the village. He soon saw some of the kids of the Rookie 9 playing and walked into an ally and changed into his real self. He walked over to near them and went to say something when a pink-haired woman said, "What are you doing here, demon? I heard you died." Soon several other adults started walking over to him and started to say other hate-filled remarks, and somebody threw a rock which cut his head. The sight of blood was enough to turn the now growing crowd of angry villagers into a shark-feeding frenzy. They started to attack with more rocks and an occasional stick. Somebody threw a kunai at him and he was going to let it hit, but suddenly it was deflected, and there stood a certain red-eye woman and she said, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The same pink-haired woman from before who has a daughter named similar to Hakura said, "He was going to attack our children." A voice from behind the crowd said, "Actually, Mrs. Haruno, he was walking over to them and did not do anything when you broke the third's law." Another villager said, "Mind your own business, Snake Witch." And he started to walk toward her still with a kunai in his hand when suddenly he tripped and hit his head on the ground. He turned to see what tripped him and cursed as several people snickered at him for tripping over a tree root. The third arrived and said, "Anko Kurinai, thank you for stopping this before it got out of hand. Please take him and make sure he is okay. I saw everything, and Mrs. Haruno, you break my law one more time and I will enforce the penalty. Same for any of you. I have ABNU writing each of your names down right now." The crowd paled and a kid with a dog on his head said, "Mom, what was that all about?" Inoichi, who walked over with Ino and saw everything, said, "People being idiots in Azaka." He was looking at Naruto and saw something he never seen before, respect. Unlike everyone else in the crowd, he saw what Naruto did, and he now understood a few things that have been bothering him. He saw the tree branch that came out of the ground just a little to stop the guy from attacking Anko. He looked around and noticed he was not the only one who had caught that. 2 looking around make that 3 others had caught it. A Nara, a Akimichi, and an Aburame. He would have to talk to them later. For Naruto to use the first bloodline would mean he is most likely the guy who sent flowers to the 2 women. He looked at them now and snickered to himself and said, "Already protecting the ones you care for." Mrs. Haruno walked over and said, "Damn right, Inoichi. Why won't the Hokage just kill him already?" As she watched the 2 women lead Naruto toward an ally to get across town. Inoichi narrowed his eyes and said, "Mrs. Haruno, please don't say that, Aegean. How would you feel if it would have been your daughter instead of him?" Mrs. Haruno said, "I would never give my child for that." Inoichi said, "Then perhaps whoever did was a better person than you. Goodbye." And he walked away bringing his daughter with him. For those who are wondering what happened in the ally way, let's take a look. As Kurinai and Anko led Naruto into the ally, a red glow surrounded him and all of his wounds healed. He looked around and hinged into his blonde hair Arisher form and turned to both of them and said, "Thank you." Anko said, "What were you trying to do back there, Gaki?" Naruto sighed and leaned against the wall and said, "I thought that I could introduce myself to those who would become the Rookie 9 so that way when I came back I don't have to try as hard to befriend them. I should have known better." Kurinai looked at him and said, "It's it always like that for you." Naruto said, "That was nice to some things that's happened." Anko said, "You okay now, Gaki?" Naruto nodded and then stood straight up like someone kicked him and looked toward the east side of the village and said, "What the hell? How the hell did they both get here so quick? I knew he was coming but her also. What the hell did you do, Kakashi?" Both women looked at him and Kurenai said, "What are you talking about?" Naruto said, "I smell Gambunta and Katsuyu, which means both Tsunade and Jiraiya are arriving soon." Both women looked at each other and said, "Are you sure?" Before Naruto could answer though, they felt a great rumbling in the ground and heard what sounded like an explosion. Naruto said, "I know those two anywhere fighting Manda so many times." He then jumped up on the rooftop, quickly followed by Anko and Kurenai. Just as they made it, they saw a huge frog standing beside a huge slug with two people on each. Well, the one on the frog was slumped over the other's shoulder. On further inspection, you could see Kakashi was hogtied and looked to be in great pain. Naruto said, "Told you. If I had to guess, the old pervert read my note and found Tsunade on his way here. Don't know why Kakashi like that though. Oh shit." Anko said, "What?" Naruto said, "Last time I seen that look on her face, Tsunade removed a traitor's heart." Kurenai said, "What's so bad about that?" Naruto said, "She used her pinky to knock it out his back." Both women blanched and Naruto said, "My guess is somebody better protect the Hokage." Kurenai asked, "Why?" Naruto said, "A week after the Kyuubi attack, Tsunade arrived, because she wanted to see me, but the third told her straight to her face I was dead, even though he knew I was alive." Just then Tsunade jumped off the slug, and when she landed, a 40-foot crater appeared in the middle of the road and she took off toward the Hokage Tower. Not a moment later, Jiraiya jumped off with Kakashi still over his shoulder, and he also took off toward the tower. Naruto saw both summons disappear and Shizun walking slowly and scared. Naruto grabbed the hands of both women beside him and flamed Shushin to beside Shizun and had a Kagebunshin grab her, and all four of them flamed Shushin to the Hokage office just in time to see the Hengus fly off as the door was sent sailing. Naruto released the three women he had and leaned against the wall. A moment later, Jiraiya burst through the window, and before anyone could say anything, Naruto went through hand signs, slamming his hands into the ground and said, "Doton, Yomi Numa, Earth Release, Underworld Swamp," and everyone except the three women behind him could feel all of their energy being drained and they were unable to move. Naruto looked up, dropping his henge, and said, "Hello, grandparents. Calm down and we can go somewhere more private to talk." Everyone who was in the room was looking at him, and he finally released the Justu and relaxed. Tsunade looked at him and said, "How?" Naruto said, "Come with me to my home and I will tell you what you need to know. You also, Ero-sanin. By the way, what the hell did you do to Kakashi?" Jiraiya said, "I didn't," and pointed to Tsunade. Tsunade said, "He pissed me off. Let's go so we can talk." Naruto nodded and flashed through some hand seals and said, "Secret art, hotel room escape." And the door to the Hokage office repaired itself. Jiraiya looked at him and said, "How do you know my jutsu?" Naruto yawned and held out a perfect Rasengan and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. Let's go to my place. I'm sure Shizun is tired from riding Katsuyu. Saraheim and Sensiheim, you're both welcome to come. Sorry about the mess, old man. Tell Kakashi I will talk to him later, but don't tell him anything else." The third sighed, mumbling something about being too old, and just nodded as Naruto created 5 Kagebunshins and they each grabbed a person flame Shushin away. Kakashi ground a few minutes later and saw he was in the Hokage office, and he sat up and said, "What? How did I get back here? Last thing I remember was telling Jiraiya how I told Shizun about Tsunade grandson being alive." The third said, "How did you know he was her grandson?" "Naruto just told me he sent you to find Jiraiya so they could find her." Kakashi chuckled and said, "When I was still a genin, Arashi-sensei has us break into the hospital record office and compare his blood to everyone on file there. I learned they both were his parents then. If I would have known Naruto was Sensei's son, I would have told them sooner. Especially since he is my godson." The third said, "You're lucky to be alive because Jiraiya said Tsunade was the one who did that to you." Kakashi said, "Where are they?" The third said, "Naruto took them to his new home." Kakashi said, "Where does he live?" The third said, "You will have to see for yourself. Give them today to talk, and I am sure Naruto will come find you and take you there." Kakashi sighed and just nodded. Meanwhile, in Naruto's pad, as they all 6 arrive at Naruto house in the living room, Naruto nods and his Kagebunshins change into butlers and go to get some drinks. Naruto said, "I will be back in a moment," and walks into another room. Tsunade looks around the room and notices something quickly. There are pictures of her and Jiraiya and Shizune with someone who looks like Naruto, as well as several other pictures of things she knows are not real. Her heart stops though when she sees a picture of Naruto, her Shizune, and Jiraiya, and Naruto is wearing her grandfather's necklace. She quickly pats it and finds it still there. Just then the butlers return with drinks for everyone. Jiraiya is sitting quietly. The fact he did 3 jutsu in the span of 3 minutes surprised him, but the fact 2 of them he should have no way of knowing is something that worries him. He takes the drink the butler gives him and takes a sip. He looks at everyone in the room. Tsunade looks like she sees a ghost. Shizune is looking scared. Orochimaru apprentice is here for some reason. Where the hell is the cursed seal? Anko rubs her neck and Tsunade turns around and notices it's also gone, and Naruto walks back in the room and said, "I removed it." And he is carrying 3 scrolls and he hands one to Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shizune and said, "This should answer most of the questions you will have." And he sits down and sips some wine, shocking 3 of the 5 people here besides himself. Tsunade broke the blood seal and opens the scroll and nearly drops it as it is in her own handwriting. She looks up and notices that both her assistant and Jiraiya are also shocked. She begins. "As you have already guessed, I am writing this myself to you. The boy here, Naruto, is really your grandson. He only found out after I told him. Even though he looks young, he is a lot older mentally. The QB is dead, but keep that to yourself. Naruto was dying, but the damn fox gave its life to the Shinigami to allow him to redo his life from the age of 5. He won't tell you what is going to happen, so don't ask, as it might make things worse. This scroll was written so he did not have to explain everything over and over again, because he truly wants to have his family. He has 3 women who he wants to marry, but I won't tell you in case he changes his mind. Beware of Orochimaru and any advice Naruto gives you about him. Also, the man who killed our grandfather is still alive, or at least until Naruto kills him again. He will explain that when the time comes. Also, beware the Uchiha. Ask him if he is ready to have his family name announced. If he is, then support him. He knows all the laws of the village. Even the ones about how our family owns the actual village. Stop drinking and gambling so much unless you take him with you, and never bet against the brat. He always wins. He learned the first stage of Rasengan in a few days. The second stage in 5 days, and the last stage in 1 week, which is how he won our grandfather's necklace. He has grandfather bloodline. Hopefully all of his lifetimes won't make him like his grandfather. He does not know who his mother is. You know, but don't tell him unless she says so. She also does not know he is alive. The old man did not know they were married, so he did not know she was his mother, and even then their relationship would not have been looked on well. She is alive, but I don't know where. Have fun and make sure that damn pervert does not turn our grandson into one, and he does not tell who his mother is. Have fun. Yourself. Jiraiya was reading his and said, "You learned Rasengan in less than a month. Damn gaki. Must be my superior genes." Tsunade frowned and said, "We need to talk later, Jiraiya." Naruto took another sip of his wine, said, "I already know how you both got together. I do have one thing to say back on. Your brother was killed by the Hebe team for his experiments. That is where he got the DNA of the first to put in Yamato." Jiraiya looked at Anko and Kurenai, and Naruto said, "You even think about trying to peek on Saraheim, Senseiheim, or Tamariheim, and I will make sure the rest of your ninja career is as a kunoichi. Also, I have already sent a proposal to buy your publisher, pervert." Jiraiya paled and said, "There's no way you have enough money to do that, gaki." Naruto smirked and said, "The last time I checked I had close to $900 billion in gold Erosanin, and I have added to it since then, and that's not counting Dad's estate either." Tsunade dropped her scroll and said, "You could pay off all my debts." Naruto looked at her and said, "You think I'm stupid? You may be known as the legendary sucker, but am not. I will help you with some, but not all, because then you won't learn not to gamble so much." Shizune looked up from her scroll and said, "Naruto, your mother's Rin." Tsunade gasped and said, "Shizune, what are you doing?" Shizune sighed and said, "Helping my little brother out, or at least that's what the scroll says I think of him as, and since you both have known for 5 times that we have seen these scrolls, I made a promise to myself that on this time he would know if he did not." Naruto looked at Tsunade and then Shizune and then Jiraiya and saw the look on his face, saying he knew also, and he said, "I want answers." Tsunade sighed and said, "It's not our place to tell you." Shizune said, "Tsunade, from what I read until he started going back in to start over, he never knew anything about who he was and who his family is. It says he only found out you were his grandmother by chance, and Jiraiya was a guilt trip on you. He found out who his father was because he was wounded and you had to give him a blood transfusion. Please tell him who his other family is so he can have that peace. and she had a tear in her eyes. Tsunade sighed and said, "All right, I will tell you. What do you know about your dad's genin team Naruto?" Naruto said, "Just that dad's teammate Obito, who has been reincarnated in Sword, and Kakashi were teamed up with a girl. Obito originally died but was saved by a member of Atsuki and gave Kakashi his Sharingan. Rin left because she was heartbroken over the fact that Obito died after professing his love, and she was a fangirl for Kakashi." Tsunade nodded and said, "Everything up to the reason why she left you are right on." Naruto said, "Huh?" Tsunade said, "The real reason she left is she was pregnant but not with you, and no, you don't have a brother or sister. She had an abortion, which was a good thing because I'm sure you heard about how Rin was captured before Obito died, right?" Naruto nodded and Tsunade said, "The ninja that captured her tortured her not only mentally but physically, and you can figure the rest out." Naruto looked down as Tsunade continued, "You heard how Kakashi passed out and had Obito's eye, right? Well, when your dad arrived, he was able to figure out what had happened and promised her not to tell, which he never did. I only know because I did the abortion when she left the village. I took care of her for a while after that, and then your dad came back and brought her back to the village, and they started to fall in love. The pervert over here, even though he did not know Erasure was his son, was there too as a witness, as was I and Shizun. I ran into her and she told me the same thing. The third told me that you had died when the hospital collapsed. He did not know she was your mother. She was an Inuzuku and she was banished when she came back from the abortion because her clan knew she was pregnant when she came back on the mission, and its agents Their clan laws to have an abortion. Because of Their heightened senses, they knew she was and knew what happened. When that happened, she returned to your dad and he had her hidden at the Kazama estates. Sadly, that was destroyed during the Kyubi attack. The pervert over here, even though he did not know Erasure was his son, was there too as a witness, as was I and Shizun. I ran into her and she told me the same thing. The third told me that you had died when the hospital collapsed. He did not know she was your mother. They had only been married for a year when you were born, and he kept it secret from everyone. Kakashi knew Erasure was going to have a kid, but did not know who the mother was for obvious reasons. Your dad had the king of Snow Country do the ceremony in Snow Country." Naruto said, "Yuki's dad." Everyone looked at him and he sighed, said, "I save a few countries who are under triance in my genin career. I saved Snow Country and restore Princess Yuki to power. I still can't believe she did an Ika Ika Paradise movie." Now when he said that, three things happen. 1. Every female in the room turned to Jiraiya, knowing full well about his books. 2. The pervert ignored the growing killer intent. 3. He made a perverted giggle and wrote down while saying it out loud, "Make Ika Ika movies." Naruto blinked and for women began beating the shit out of Jiraiya. After they were done, Tsunade said, "Now where was I? Oh yes, after the third told us that you had died, your mom still had Sannin travel papers and left the village. I've seen her a few times but not in over a year. I did not want to tell you until I talked it over with her because of the painful memories." Naruto sighed and closed his eyes and said, "I can relate." Kurenai said, "Is Rin any relation to Hana?" Tsunade thought for a moment and said, "Is she the clan head's daughter?" Kurenai nodded and Tsunade said, "Then Hana is Rin's niece, so Naruto's cousin." Naruto groaned and said, "That means I'm related to Kiba. Damn it. No wonder my senses are better than the Inuzukas. I always thought it was because of Kyubi. Now I find out the damn furball just increased what I already had. I bet the fox is laughing that one over in the grave." Tsunade sighed and said, "So now that we know the truth, what do you plan to do, Naruto?" Naruto said, "I plan on leaving the village for a few years and train and spend time getting to know my family better. Return in about 6 years so I can graduate with my age group. Get everything ready. Kill Orochimaru, Uchiha Itachi, Uchiha Madara, Kakuzu. Restore my clan. Make my family proud and settle down and have a family. That about wraps it up." Shizun said, "Is anyone else disturbed by this?" Everyone nods and Naruto said, "What?" Anko slaps her head and said, "You're too damn mature, Gaki. Put your older henge on so it's not so disturbing." Naruto groaned and said, "You're no fun." "Ah well. New family tradition. Since the old hag here uses a genjutsu, I might as well." Slam. Naruto's head went into the floor and down to the forest below, followed by the rest of his body. Tsunade looks down the hole and said, "Where the hell is this house at?" Anko said, "Gaki built it in the forest of death." Sweat drops. Naruto walks back into the house in his blonde hair Erasure disguise and said, "Don't worry about the hole. The house repairs itself every 10 minutes. Jiraiya said, "You're a seal master. Aren't you, kid?" Naruto said, "My own personal seals makes the Fuinjutsu Shiki Fujin, demonic soul seal, look like a flash tag." Jiraiya whistled a low whistle and said, "We have got to compare notes." Naruto said, "Visit my library. All my jutsu and seals are in there, including medical that both Bakon and Shizunekin might like to look at." Tsunade said, "Why do you call me Aunt?" Naruto said, "Would you rather me call you Abakan?" Tsunade had a vein appear and said, "Aunt will be fine, I guess. I don't like being cold old." Naruto snickered and said, "Don't worry. By the time I'm done, your genjutsu will have gray hairs." Jiraiya laughed and Naruto said, "Laugh it up, Ero-sanin. I'm sure Bakon would love to know about the time you put an aphrodisiac in her sake. Only thing that kept you from getting married and killed that night was the fact that the Hokage summoned you for getting him busted peeping at the hot springs." Shock was on three faces and Jiraiya said, "You hate me, don't you?" Naruto said, "Nope. Just keeping my promise to Gambunta to get the hell beat out of you for using his kids in your researching adventures." Jiraiya was sent courtesy of a super fist through the wall and across the forest of death only to land in the hot springs. Unfortunately for him, he landed in the hot springs owned by the Hyugas and was being used by no more than 30 women. He learned a new meaning to the words gentle hands. Naruto looked at the clock on the wall and got up and walked over to Anko and Kurenai and said, "Well, make yourself at home. I will be back shortly." And grabbed both their hands and flamed Shushin away. He appeared on top of the Hokage monument and said, "Thank you both, Aegean, for today. I hope to see you both, Aegean, before I leave." Anko said, "Why did you bring us here, Gaki?" Naruto smiled and said, "It's sunset and this is the best place in the village to see it. I wanted to do something special for both of you." Pointing off the mountain over the village. Both women were in awe by the display and did not know it until they felt a pressure point being hit on their neck, sending them into heaven from pleasure. Naruto did not release it either. He held it until he heard them both moan from pleasure, then he released it and kissed them both before they could react since they still had their eyes closed from pleasure. He kept kissing them both and they were both being turned on by it. When the kiss broke, they both opened their eyes and noticed two Narutos and they said, "I did not want one to feel left out by that. I love you both. Good night," and both flamed Shushin away so neither woman could tell which one was real. 10 days have passed since the two Sanins arrived in the village and mysteriously disappeared. Today they had reappeared but were standing at the front gate. Funny thing is they had the Kyuubi brat with them. At the gate were only 4 people who were not leaving. They were Anko, Kurenai, Kakashi and the third Hokage. A lot has happened in those 10 days. Naruto decided that giving Kakashi access to his library at this time might not be a good idea because then he would know how strong he could be. He decided besides his family only the third Anko and Kurenai would be allowed for now. The third was supporting Two Black Eyes for lying about Naruto being dead, but at least he was still alive. Naruto had signed the Toad contract but he did not make it away with kissing both Anko and Kurenai. They had Tsunade put a temporary chakra poison in his food when she cooked and made it where he could not escape. Flashback. Naruto was sitting on his couch when both Anko and Kurenai walked in. It had been 2 days since he seen them and kissed them but was not anything really. As they walked toward him he saw a gling in Anko's eyes he had not seen since him and the other Anko tortured Kabuto. One thought went through his mind. "I'm screwed." And he tried to leave but couldn't because his chakra was screwing up. Deciding diplomacy might be his only chance, he said, "Look, I'm sorry. I wanted to kiss you both and I figured that would be my last chance for a long time." Kurenai looked at Anko and said, "He said he wanted to kiss us. He never asked if we wanted it." Anko nodded and said, "What do you take us for? The kind that kiss on the first date?" Naruto said, "Of course not. I know I should have waited but..." He was cut off by a kunia landing in front of his crotch and he looked up and Anko said, "What makes you think if you waited it would have been alright?" Naruto was scared. He did not want to find out if his healing ability has the same weakness as Kabuto, so he said, "You're right. I took advantage of you both and I shouldn't have." Kurenai said, "Yes, and now you are going to pay." Anko pulled out another kunia and walked over, cutting the top of his shirt off on one side. Kurenai did the same on the other. Naruto tried to stand but had no energy and noticed a chakra draining seal had been placed on his chair. He said, "Is there any way I can make it up to you both?" Anko looked at Kurenai and said, "I don't know. What you got to offer?" Naruto said, "Dinner, my treat." Kurenai said, "No. Not even a good start. As she started to cut the side of his pant leg, Naruto said, "Dinner anywhere you want and a free week at the hot spring my treat." Enko said, "No. It's tempting, but that still makes us feel cheap and used." As she cuts his other pant leg, Naruto was getting scared even more and said, "The dinner, hot spring, and a massage." Kurenai blinked and said, "That is getting a little better, but you could cheat us on the massage." As she cut his pant leg all the way to his crotch, Naruto was afraid his family line was ending this day, so he said, "Dinner anywhere every night for a week, hot spring for a week, a massage with oils and all the pleasure points I know once a day until I leave the village, and I will bring chocolates and flowers for each of you, and I will take you shopping and pay for it. I promise." And he closed his eyes, afraid of what would happen next. Anko looked at Kurenai and Kurenai back at Anko and nodded, and then Naruto heard the fabric of his pants rip and looked down to see how bad it was and saw that they had both just cut the legs off at the crotch on his pants, and they both said, "Deal." Flashback end. Naruto money took a huge dent this week as he pampered both Anko and Kurenai. $1,000 a day each is what it costed because they made him take them to the most expensive restaurants, costing $225 a meal each. The chocolates were $100 a box each a day. Massage oils costed him $75 a day each. The hot spring was also the best and most expensive one in town, so it costed $150. Flowers were $50 each. Shopping was $400 a day each. Massaging two beautiful women in two-piece bikinis. Priceless. When you have the body of a 6-year-old and the mind that has had perverts as senseis all your life. It's a great life. Anko walked over and said, "Did you learn your lesson, Gaki?" Naruto said, "Yeep. No kissing on the first date." Kurenai walked over and said, "Yes, even though it was not a date." Naruto smiled and said, "True, but I will wait to kiss you both on the second date when I get back," as he dodged a kunia being thrown. Kakashi walked over and said, "So when are you going to show me your place, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Maybe when I come back." Kakashi nodded and said, "So how did you get the Ice Queen and Snake Mistress to kiss you?" Kurenai said, "We did not kiss him, Kakashi, and you better not tell anyone either." Anko said, "But he does have magic hands." Kurenai turned bright red and said, "Shut, Anko." To bad Kakashi heard them and gave a perverted giggle. Naruto said, "Kakashi, just so you know, even though you are my godfather does not make you immune to my wrath." Kakashi said, "What can a little kid like you do to a jounin like me?" Naruto said, "I bought Jiraiya's publishing company. I could close it." Kakashi paled and said, "You hate me, right?" Naruto smiled an evil smile and said, "No, Kakashi. If I did, I would do far worse. I would start printing Guy's physical education book in Ica Ica Paradise covers." Kakashi took a step back in fear and said, "That look on your face reminds me of my old teammate Rin. God, I would love to see her Aegean." Naruto waved his hand dismissively and said, Yeah, Kakashi, I don't want to hear about you past social life." Kakashi sighed and let his perverted side take over and said, "Man, I wish I could see her ass Aegean. I was an idiot back then. I could have had her when she was my fangirl before. If she came back, I would take her home and make love to her all night long." Now Naruto just learned that Rin was his mother, and even though he never met her, he did not like the idea of perverts talking like that about her, so he did what any self-respecting number 1 hyperactive knucklehead with 11,000 jutsu in his memory with the power of the greatest of all demons power at his disposal. He walked behind Kakashi, who was still daydreaming, bent down and put his finger in a tiger seal, started sending some of his wind manipulation around his fingers and said, 10,000 years of death, and shoved his fingers up Kakashi's ass, sending him flying across the village. Everyone was sweat-dropping at this, and he said, "I hate perverts and I don't like what he was thinking about." The third said, "Naruto. Just because he says something to upset you does." He was stopped when Tsunade leaned over and whispered, "Don't tell my grandson he should not defend his mother's honor. He might kill you." The third paled and coughed before saying, "Right, Naruto. Good job and keep up the good work. Haviasaphetropi." And he left in a swirl of leaves. Jiraiya walked over and said, "We better get on the road." Naruto nodded and walked over and said, "I will miss you, Himes, and I left a going-away present for you after I walk out the gates. Goodbye, my Himes," and he had two clones appear and henge and kiss both before turning and walking out the gates, followed by Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Shizune. After they were out of sight, Anko said, "I wonder what he got for us." Kurenai said, I don't know. Just then music started to play all over the village, and Enko looked at Kurenai and said, he didn't. They both look at the Hokage monument and see the Hokage's heads are bopping up and down, and then they start singing. By the end of the song, the entire village is out and the Kakashi appears holding his ass, beside Enko and Kurenai, who are both red-faced, and said, friend of yours. He received a swift punch in the face and he sighs and said, I need to go to bed. A few miles away from the village, Naruto puts his pod in his bag and Shizen said, you should turn that down. I could hear it all the way here. Naruto said, sorry. It only has 1 volume. Tsunade said, I'm sure they could hear it all the way back in Konoha. Naruto said, you have no idea. Listen, why don't we go to Suna first? Jiraiya said, why's that, Naruto? Naruto said, there is a boy with a seal problem there. I think you might be able to fix Erosanin. A simple 3-star seal with a berserker seal over it holding the one-tail raccoon demon. Everyone looked at him and Tsunade said, why do you want to do that? Naruto smirked and said, it never hurts to get in favor of you possible future brother-in-law, does it? Shizen said, Nizan, you're crazy, you know that. Naruto said, like a fox. So what do you say? After that we can go to Traman City. I know they have great casinos and hot springs there. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade rubbed their hands together and Sejun said, you're evil. Pure evil. Naruto changed into a very old man with a cane and said in a weak and tired voice, you should listen to your elders and use whatever weakness an enemy has. And he changed back into his 15-year-old body and said, thank God these henges actually are real. I would hate to have to take each step in my actual size. Jiraiya said, it would be good training for your bodygaki. Naruto said, tell me, what would happen to my body with 10x gravity seals on and 10x chakra weights on? Tsunade said, your body would be crushed and you would die in minutes. Why? Naruto said, oh, I went from 10x to 15x last week on both. I just wanted to make sure I would not have any major problems. That's all. In a straight face, missing the shocked look on his 3 traveling companions' faces. Tsunade looked at him after gaining some composure and said, that is so wrong, kid. Naruto said, come on. I want to get there while I'm young. Jiraiya looked at Tsunade and said, why did we ever have kids? A vein appeared on her forehead and said, I had erasure you asshole after you knocked me up drunk. Give me one reason why I should not kill you where you stand. Jiraiya pulled out a book and handed it to her and said, I bought all your gambling markers you had. And walked to catch up with Naruto. Tsunade sighed and said, this is going to be a long trip. She would not know how right she was when she said that. Flash forward 6 years. Kakashi sighed as he looked at his ABNU mask. Today he had to put it away, probably never to wear it again. He looked in his drawer and pulled out a mask he had not wore since he was a genin and put it on. Why was he depressed? Simple. The Council of Konoha forced the Hokage to make him a Jounin sensei. He wanted to refuse, but they said with him being the only other Sharingan user in the village he had to do it. He looked at himself in the mirror and then walked to his dresser getting the last of his ABNU paperwork together and was about to leave when he felt someone enter his house. He quickly grabbed a kunia and sneaked into the living room. The sight that greeted him was one he could only dream about. A woman in a brown coat and a red dress with brown hair and brown eyes was standing in his living room. The thing that made him smile behind his mask the most was he used to know this woman. She smiled at him and said, it's been a long time, Kakashi. So what's this I hear about you wanting to make love to me all night long? Kakashi smiled even more and said, oh Rin. I don't know who has been spreading such stories about me, but if you came here for that or want me to defend your honor, I would be glad to. Rin said, oh, the gentleman who told me that is someone who I think you would have a hard time beating. Kakashi patted his chest and said, nonsense, Rin. Just tell me who it was or show him to me and I will set him straight. Rin said in an almost scared and quick voice, Omigode Kakashithachim. Pointing toward Kakashi door. Kakashi turned around and stopped dead in his tracks and paled at what appeared to be a ghost of someone he had not seen in almost 12 years. The figure was 6 foot tall and had blonde hair and blue eyes, was dressed in a white coat with blue and red flames across the bottom and the sleeves. He had a sword on his side and the look of someone with a lot of wisdom. Rin came up behind Kakashi and said still in a scared voice, it's him, Kakashi. He's the one who told me you said that. It my son Naruto. Silence was all that filled the room after that for about 1 second before the man in front of him and Rin behind him both burst out laughing and Kakashi fainted. The copycat ninja, said to have copied over 1,000 jutsu, fainted. Rin looked at Naruto and said, "That was fun, son. Thanks for doing that for me." Naruto smiled and said, "Anything for you, mom. I got bigger fish to fry." Rin nodded and said, "So when do I get to meet those two lovely ladies you told me about? Temari is a keeper." Naruto said, "They all are, but I will introduce you later. I have to take my genin test." Rin said, "Don't kill anyone." Naruto said, "One time, just because he deserved it. It was a sympathy kill anyways." Rin said, "You shoved the dude into Tsunade's chest and she crushed what was made him a man." Naruto said, "He should not have called you that." Rin said, "I am a bitch and proud of it. Now get to school or no Shushin for a month." Naruto sighed and said, "Yes, mom. See you at home." She nodded and he flammed Shushin away. At the Hokage office, the third sighed as he finished hearing what all happened on the training trip. He said, "So all you did was lost $1 billion that Naruto earned back somehow. Bought 20 casinos, 10 hot spring, 2 publishing companies, 10 wineries, visited Suna for clan business and got married and met Naruto's mom." Jiraiya said, "Don't forget making 6 new Ika books and bought a cruise line." The third said, "Did you do any training?" Shizune said, "Of course, Hokage-sama." The third sighed in relief until Tsunade said, "I trained not to gamble so much." Jiraiya said, "I trained to only peek on willing women." Shizune blushed and said, "I trained on the horizontal limbo." Everyone looked at her, sweat dropping, until she said, "Just kidding." The third sighed and said, "Thank God." Shizune then smiled and said, "I trained in how to table dance." The third screamed, "Get out now." And all 3 of them left and Tsunade said, "The sad thing is that last one was true. Never give Shizune liqueur." Irika was having a good day. Today was the last day of this year's class and he was just about to call the last name on the list when a swirl of fire appeared beside him and a blonde-haired kid with blue eyes and a white coat that was taller than he was stood beside him and said, "Sorry I'm late. I got lost on the road of life." Everyone sweat dropped and Irika said, "Can I help you with something?" The blonde said, "Yes. The Hokage sent me to take the final test. I just arrived back in the village with my family." Irika nodded and said, "Name please." The blonde said, "Naruto Uzumaki Kazama." Irika nodded and then paled as he started writing the name and said, "What was that name, Aegean?" Naruto said, "Naruto Uzumaki Kazama." Irika shook his head and said, "Right. Well, take a seat and I will call you after the last person. Sasuke Uchiha. Please follow, come to the front of the class and perform the henge, replacement and bunshin." Sasuke walked down and did the 3 tests and then said, "Top that loser." As he walked back to his seat, Irika sighed and said, "Please do the same, Naruto." Naruto did the replacement. Sasuke, pissing, said, "Boy off." He then did a henge of Mizuki and had a sign on his back that said, "I need fiber," making everyone laugh. Irika said, "You fail." Naruto said, "Look on his back." Irika looked and the sign was there until he removed it and said, "Please do bunshin." Naruto did a half seal and did a bunshin and Irika said, "You pass. Hey, race your high 8." Just then a frog jumped through the window with a man who looked mentally disturbed on his back and Irika recognized as Jiraiya of the Sannin said, "Jiraiya-sama, what do we owe the pleasure of your visit?" Jiraiya said, "I just came to tell my grandson that his fiancée left a package at the Hokage Tower and my wife, his grandmother, took it home for him." Irika nodded and said, "Do you mind me asking who your wife and grandson is?" Jiraiya said, "Well, my wife is my old teammate Tsunade, and as for my grandson, he's right behind you." Everyone in class turned and Naruto said, "What, to Mariheim, send me Gramps?" The two were laughing their asses off, already planned on doing this a month earlier. If someone was looking at Mizuki, you could have seen him scared shitless. Sniff, sniff. I think he just shit himself. Mizuki asked, "Just how is that boy your grandson?" Naruto said, "Simple. For a village full of ninja, you failed to look underneath the underneath. Exactly how many blonde-hair, blue-eye people are there in Konoha? There are only 3 families that have those traits. One is the Yamankos. The other was the Kazama, or should I say only my father Erashur Kazama, because he was adopted during the war. Guess who were his parents actually are? One of them is right there and the other is at my house." My grandmother Tsunda Yuzum Braille is the other. Sakura said, but if he was adopted that means his grandparents lost their rights to claim him. Acting all smug with her big brain. Let's deflate it shall we. Naruto said, that rule is void when it deals with a clan that has a bloodline which I have. Sasuke said, what loser clan and bloodline do you come from? Naruto said, you say something? Oh, I have my great-great-grandfather's bloodline. The first Hokages. Mokutan Abilis. Well, if that's all for today or what? Iruka said, yes, that's all. Naruto nodded and said, hey buddy, you really do need more fiber so you won't shit yourself, Aegean. And Naruto turns to leave but stop and rolls to the side dodging a kunia. Naruto said, it's good to see you all, Sasaraheim. Anko come in through the window and walks over pulling the kunia she threw and turns and said, welcome back Gaki. Same as ever I see. The entire room is watching this afraid of what's going to happen since a kunia flew through the window at the new guy. Naruto said, your place of mine. Anko said, you have not been to your house yet, have you Gaki? Naruto said, what the hell you do to it, woman? Anko said, relax. I like the local so I moved in. It's not like you don't have the space. Better look out for old Red Eyes though. She is still a little upset about when you left. She don't know you're here yet. Naruto smiled and pulled out his pod and said, she will now. And hit play and the music started to play across the entire village. As it does, assertion readied woman who was taking a drink of wine suddenly spits it out all over the chain smoker sitting across from her. I know there's something in the wake of your smile. I get a notion from the look in your eyes, yeah. You've built a love but that love falls apart. Your little piece of heaven turns too dark. Listen to your heart when he's calling for you. Listen to your heart, there's nothing else you can do. I don't know where you're going and I don't know why. But listen to your heart before you tell him goodbye. Anko looked at Naruto along with the rest of the class and he starts counting down from 20. 19. Sometimes you wonder if this fight is worthwhile. The precious moments are all lost in the tide, yeah. They're swept away and nothing is what it seems. The feeling of belonging to your dreams. Listen to your heart. And there are voices that want to be heard. So much to mention but you can't find the words. The scent of magic, the beauty that's been. When love was wilder than the wind. 020100. The door to the classroom bust open and there stand a very beautiful-looking Kurenai panting from running. Naruto smiles and said, hello Senseiheim. I'm back. Listen to your heart when he's calling for you. Listen to your heart, there's nothing else you can do. I don't know where you're going and I don't know why, but listen to your heart before you tell him goodbye. She walks over and slaps him across the face but he takes it and then she pulls him into a passionate kiss, shocking everyone including Naruto and Anko. When they broke apart, Naruto looked at Anko and said, well, what are you waiting on? Anko then pulls him into a kiss just as passionate and then Naruto pulls both women close and then flame Shushin back to his home. Back in the classroom, Iruka clears his throat and hears scribbling and turns to see Jiraiya writing in a notebook and Iruka said, okay, class dismissed. Sakura looks around the class and sees nobody moving. Even the lazy-ass Shikamaru is awake and wide-eyed. Ino screams, what the hell was that? Jiraiya, who had quit writing, said, well, if they said yes, that would be his other two fiancés. CYA. And he jumps out the window on the toad he was still standing on. Flashback 6 months earlier. Anko and Kurenai had been called to the Hokage office for a special meeting, or as they came to call it, over 6 years mail delivery. When they arrived, the Hokage was sitting at his desk and said, oh, I am glad you're both here. I was told to give these to you and have you both go to his home and read them. I don't know why, but you both have to do it together. Anko looked at Kurenai and said, what the hell Gaki up to this time? Kurenai said, I don't know. We might as well get on with it. Anko nodded and both leafed Shushin away to Naruto's house. When they got there, they were in the living room and Anko said, okay, let's open them. They opened them and both said, what the hell? And looked at them and then looked at the other. After a moment, Kurenai said, I get it. It's a split code. I have one word, you have the next in sentence and back and forward. No wonder he wanted both of us to do it together, but why? Anko said, only one way to find out. You first. Note Kurenai is bold, Anko is normal, so you know who is talking. Greetings, my Heims. I am writing these letters so you cannot ruin the surprise and the choices that I have laid out for you. If at some point you decide you don't want what is being offered, then please hand the other one the letter and let her continue, though I hope you both make it to the end of this and accept what gift I have for you. I love you both. Now let's begin. First, go to the library and look for a scroll in the Genjutsu section called Lonely Lotus. Don't go no further in these scrolls until you do. Anko said, let's go to the library. As the two walked toward the library, Kurenai said, how did we get in this in the first place? Anko said, he broadsided us with his boyish charms and his spirit, I guess. Kurenai said, or it could have been when we let him massage us into pleasure. Anko said, you mean climax, don't you? Kurenai just nodded while blushing. When they got to the library, Naruto had it divided into easy-to-find sections and alphabetized. They soon found the scroll and read what next. Congrats on finding the scroll. Inside is a genjutsu you will have to cast later. For now, I want you to both go into the kitchen and get a glass of water each and then go to the master bedroom. When you get there, I have 4 dressers. 1 with my name on it and the other 3 are nameless for now. Go to the middle drawer in the middle of the 9 dresser drawers and open it. Inside are 2 scrolls with your name and 3rd scroll with mine on it. When you got them, continue the scroll. Anko growled and said, Gaki is asking for it. I feel like I'm the prey in a game of cat and mouse. Kurenai said, we're almost done. We are almost at the bottom, so just hang on. Anko nodded and they got 3 glasses of water and went to the master bedroom and found the 3 scrolls. They continued to read now. Please sit the glass of water on each side of the bed and sit down. You will know why in a minute. Okay. Put the scroll with your name on it and only your name, or it might be dangerous. The genjutsu scroll I had you get earlier will react to the scroll you have in your lap, and in the end you will have a choice like you do now. The genjutsu is a memory jutsu. It has each memory for you based on which scroll you have of everything I have ever said or done with you. No more secrets. The choice is yours. It will take about 1 hour and you will be thirsty afterwards. That's what the water's for. After the genjutsu ends, you will know what to do. I love you both. I hope you both will afterwards. Goodbye. Both women looked at each other and Anko said, well, why not? Don't really have anything to lose and we will finally know what he knows about us. Kurenai was nervous but nodded and they opened the genjutsu scroll and it activated both, pulling them into a world of white light. They began seeing everything he had seen or done with them, both good and bad. Kurenai saw her saving Naruto when he was a child, her trying to hook him up with her student, him saving her from being raped, Asuma's death, the third's funeral, team placements, him delivering hers and Asuma's child, them flirt dating, him sexy dancing in the street, kissing, along with many other memories, both good and bad. Anko saw her as an examiner, saving him as a child, her supporting him after Sasuke defection, removing the curse seal several times, saving her life from Orochimaru, torturing Kabuto, a prostitution mission, flirt dating, him beating her in a spar to get her to teach him, them kissing, him triping that villager, talking to her about her dreams, eating Dano, killing him through sexual frustration and several other things. Then there was a flash and Naruto stood there in front of them. He said, I did this so you would know why I feel the way I do for you, and that way I won't have any secrets when it comes to you. You are very special for me. I gave you the choice to do this and now I give you one more. The scroll with my name on it has inside 2 rings for you. You have the choice of not accepting either option, which tells me I don't hold enough interest in your heart. For that I am sorry. On the other hand, 1 ring is red ruby and it is a sign that you want to date me and get to know me better. Since I showed you everything I know about you, you can take that choice, which I doubt, but I could be wrong. The other ring is a white diamond. It has another meaning. That ring is if you accept this offer. He got down on one knee and said, will you marry me? You know I will have to have more than 1 wife and I want you to be one of them. I already told you the 3 I hope for. If you can live with that choice, please accept the white ring as a sign of my love. Flashback end. Naruto looked at the 2 women beside him and looked at their hands and smiled before getting on one knee and said, thank you both for accepting me and willing to be my wives. I hope I can make you both happy. Anko said, get up, Gaki. You can get on your knees our wedding night. Kurenai sighed and said, how the hell can you put up with her pervertedness, Naruto? Naruto smiled and said, look who my grandfather is. Kurenai sighed and said, good point. I can tell by the way you're dressed you're using your real name. Naruto nodded and said, it was a promise I made the old farts. They cut back on the gambling, peeping and drinking if I claim my real name and wear it with pride. Not to self. Do not give Shizen Niken any alcohol. Anko said, "Why?" A woman's voice behind them said, "She strips to her undies and dances on tables." Both Anko and Kurenai turned around and Kurenai asked, "Narakan, who's that?" The woman smiled and said, "My name's Rin and I'm his mother." Naruto rubbed the back of his head and said, "Hi mom. These are my other two fiancés." Anko blinked and finally said, "It's nice to meet you, Rin." Kurenai said, "I was hoping they would run into you. I'm Kurenai and this is Anko." "Wait a minute, that other girl already said yes. You never mentioned that in your letters." Naruto sighed and said, "Let me explain. See." Flashback. It had been 1 week since they had left Konoha, and now the four of them were standing in front of the Kazekage. The Kazekage said, "So what do I owe the pleasure of the visit from two of the legendary three?" Tsunade said, "Our grandson here has recently contacted you about an arranged marriage between Suna and our clan. We received your reply and was happy with it. We were just starting a training journey to help him with his bloodline when Jiraiya here received some information, and with him having one of the best spy networks in the world, we thought it would be a good chance to share it with you to build trust between us and you." The Kazekage nodded and said, "What exactly is it that you discovered?" Jiraiya said, "As I am sure you are aware, Sasori the Red has disappeared several years ago before you took office. I have gathered information on him that you would most definitely want. We also found out what happened to the previous Kazekage." The Kazekage was indeed interested now and said, "Proceed." Jiraiya said, "The contact told me that Sasori used his abilities to make human puppets and turn the previous Kazekage into one, so he could use its ability to use the iron sand. Sasori also has turned at this point 3/4 of his body into a puppet and has either joined or preparing to join a new group of S-class criminals that plan to come after your youngest son Gaara." The Kazekage was indeed curious and surprised by the info until the end. He said in an emotionalist voice, "Why would S-class criminals want to take my son?" Naruto said, "The same reason they want to take me. They have a way to take out each of the 9-tailed demons from the current vessels." The Kazekage blinked and said, "I was not aware that the Leaf Village had one. I would assume it would have to be Kyuubi since he is the only one to attack your village." Naruto said, "Yes, the Kyuubi is sealed inside me for now." The Kazekage said, "What do you mean for now?" Naruto said, "My bloodline has the ability to control demons. It helped me control the demon's enormous power, and with the help of the seals and my bloodline I will completely absorb the demon's power by the time I'm 16 if not sooner." The Kazekage nodded and said, "That is indeed fortunate." Tsunade said, "It is also the biggest secret in our village. Only one person outside this room knows it, the Hokage himself. All the adults in the village knows Kyuubi is inside of him. Less than 10 know he is the Yondiame's son. Less than 5 know he is our grandson. I guess you could see the need to keep this secret." The Kazekage nodded and asked, "What is the name of this group you are warning me about?" Jiraiya said, "Akatsuki, and so far they have recruited or are recruiting from my source. My source also tells me that they want becoming active for 6 years besides recruiting. They have to make sure all precautions are ready before they start capturing and extracting them." The Kazekage rubbed his temples and said, "It's hard to decide what's right sometimes." Jiraiya nodded and said, "Kazekage, I don't want to overstep my bounds, but I heard some people talking on the way here inside the village about being afraid of Gaara because of the demon. I am sure you best Sealmaster did the job fine, but if you would like I could take a look at it and tell you if there's any way for him to control it better. The only person besides the Yondiame that I have seen with skills that are or will supersede my own is my grandson, who has already come up with a way to control more of his demonic chakra without damaging his coils." The Kazekage seemed to think about it and said, "I will allow you to look, but I will be present and you can't do anything without my permission. If you do, I get your grandson as payment." Naruto said, "Agreed. Shall we?" The Kazekage looked at him and asked, "You're coming?" Naruto said, "Since my life is involved and the fact I can sometimes come up with new sealing methods that my grandfather overlooks makes it a wise choice." The Kazekage nodded and said, "Very well. Follow me." They quickly left and soon came to where Gaara was living with his uncle, and the Kazekage said, "Gaara, I want you to let this man and his grandson to look at your seal." Gaara nodded and pulled his shirt aside and let everyone look at it. Naruto said, "Kazekage, his sand is hiding the true seal because I can tell from here there is enough breaks in it to be a fake. Would you allow me to use my bloodline a little to drop the sand enough so we can see the true seal?" The Kazekage was shocked they could tell about his armor of sand and said, "Of course." Naruto put his hand on the ground and started to use his bloodline. 6 wooden pillars shot out of the ground around Gaara, who seemed to calm down a lot, and the sand fell to the floor. Jiraiya walked over and looked at it and said, "I take back what I said that whoever did the sealing knew what they were doing. He can't sleep. Can he?" The Kazekage said, "No, the demon won't let him." Jiraiya said, "Bullshit. If you wanted, he could sleep and still have full control of the demon's power. Whoever did this put 2 incompatible seals together and also a berserker seal. I say anywhere from 5 to 15 years the demon will be free from Gaara and Gaara will be dead." The Kazekage said, "I see. Would you be able to fix this mistake?" Jiraiya looked at it and said, "Yes, especially with Gaki's help over there. I can put a brand new seal on and shatter the other. Gaara would have even more control on the demon as well as more power. He would also be able to sleep." The Kazekage said, "Do it." 2 days later, the sealing had been done and Gaara was asleep. Today, Naruto met Temari, and she said, "Thank you for giving my little brother back." Naruto said, "Don't worry, Tamarheim. That's what family does." Temari looked at him funny and said, "Family? I did not know we were related." Naruto said, "We're not. I asked you, Dad, if I could marry you. He said it was okay with him, and as long as it's okay with you, we will be married when we get older." Temari looked at him and said, "Why not? You're cute and we're family." End flashback. "And we have been sending letters back and forward like I have with both of you ever since, and I keep giving her the chance to back out. Hell, even Mom did last month when we stopped there to check on Gaara's seal. Only people who know the seal has been changed are the Kagekage and his 3 kids and my family, counting you both. I gave Temari a matching ring to yours. She will be here for the Chunin exams and stay here afterwards." Anko sighed and said, "So how did you find each other?" Rin said, "Well, it all started when..." Flashback 2 years. Rin was sitting in a bar drinking. She hardly ever drank, but this day, October 10th, the day she lost her husband and son. A drunk walked over and said, "Hey baby, want to come back to my place for some fun?" Rin was about to say something as she sat her glass down when, "Shizunaiken, get off that table and put some cloths on before you make a fool of yourself." Rin turned and saw a woman she respected table dancing with only a pair of panties on and her breast wrapped. Rin looked over at the other people and saw Tsunade and Jiraiya and Erasure. "No, it can't be." And she slowly started walking over to them. Rin, when she got close, said, "Erasure, is that you?" Naruto turned around and Shizun said in a very drunk voice, "Glad you could make it. Thought you would miss you son Heire's birthday." And passed out. Rin, who was a little drunk, looked at Shizun, and then at the person she thought was her husband, and then felt someone grab her and spin her around, and the guy from earlier said, "Listen here, bitch, nobody blows me off like that." Naruto, in his 15-year henge with blonde hair and blue eyes, being the only sober person in the bar unable to actually get drunk because of his demon chakra, had understood what Shizun had said and knew that this had to be his mom. He growled when the guy grabbed her and spun her around, but all gloves wear off when he called her a bitch. He did not care if a girl was his best friend or worst enemy. He hated hearing women called that, and for it to be his mom. Ha 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 ha. Naruto walked over calmly and said, "Listen, buddy. Go fuck yourself and leave my mother alone." Rin looked at Naruto shocked, unable to properly get out of shock either from the 3 bottles of sake she done drunk or the fact Shizun called this guy her son, and he called her his mother, to do anything, and watched as the man took a swing at Naruto. Naruto ducked under the swing and grabbed the man by his pants and shirt in the back and swung him hard away, hoping to just hit a wall or something. Instead, he landed face first in Tsunade's breast. Now, for those who don't know anything about Tsunade, here is a history lesson. She sucks at gambling, does not know when to quit drinking, hates perverts, and when drunk and when someone she thinks is a pervert, 2 things happen. The man in her mind is automatically given an overlay of Jiraiya, and the second thing is she has no grudges about holding back. Tsunade did the only thing she would in a situation where a man messes with her breast. "Jiraiya, I warned you for the last time, now you lose them." And she forcefully grabbed what makes him a man and with her intense strength crushed them. Pants do nothing to cushion the blow when you have her strength. The poor guy screamed so loud like a little girl that everyone in the bar turned and saw Tsunade still holding on, and all the men covered themselves. Unfortunately for the man, Jiraiya, who was drunk under the table, had insisted on a drinking contest for Naruto's birthday, so Tsunade had 14 bottles of sake at this point. Shizun bailed out at 3 but started taking cloths off as she got hotter after that. Jiraiya passed out at 12 bottles and Naruto was on his 16. Tsunade passes out still holding the guy who was screaming. Naruto, feeling sorry for the poor bastard, did what any man would do in that situation. He walked over and broke the guy's neck. He turned around and smiled, dropping the henge to show the real him, and started to say something when he saw Shizen jump off the table and lands on Rin, knocking both of them out as she screamed, "Banzai." Naruto sighed and created a few cage bunshin, picking up his drunk family and flame Shushin to their hotel rooms. End flashback. And when I woke up, Naruto and the others explained to me what really happened. The Hokage would have my wrath, but Naruto said if he did try his best to save his life all those time. Alright ladies, I don't care if you are his fiancé. No sex on the weekdays. Everyone looked at her and Kurenai looked at Naruto and he said, "Does insanity run in my family?" Rin said no, but even I can tell that these two women are doing all they can from taking you here, and no. I can smell it. Naruto slapped his forehead and said, "Why must every role model I have in life be a pervert?" Rin smiled and said, "How do you think I survived after your dad died?" Anko looked at her and said, "You're a prostitute." Rin said, "No, of course not. I'm an ortha." Kurenai sighed to herself, thinking it was okay, until Rin continued, "I write the female companion to Ika Paradise. Men for fun." Kurenai blushed. Anko said, "You write those. They're great." And Naruto slaps his forehead Aegean and said, "I am surrounded by perverts." Anko said, "This coming from the kid at age of 5 had magic fingers and hands." Rin blushed and said, "Chakra into the pressure points." Naruto looked at her and said, "Yeah, how did you know?" Rin said, "You take after your father." Naruto walked over and hits his head against the wall, ignoring the three women behind him. He stops and looks toward the village and said, "Shit." All three women looked at him and he said, "Gaara's here." Rin said, "How do you?" She was cut off by a swirl of sand and 4 figures could be seen standing in his front room where it was. One was an older man with a sword on his side and a long trench coat. The one next to him was dressed in black and had a package on his back with makeup on his face. Beside him was a boy with red hair and the kanji for love. He also had a long trench coat, but it was brown, and he had his arms crossed and a smile on his face. But right beside him was a beautiful blonde hair girl in a white battle outfit with a fan on her back that had the design of a Kyuubi and Shikaku fighting on it. Naruto turned to them and said, "Long time no see, Tamarihime. It's good to see you as well, Gaara and Baki. I don't talk to your puppet Kankuro." Gaara said, "It's good to see you as well, brother." Kankuro's puppet laughed and said, "True, but I only show the real me to women and on the battlefield." Naruto said, "Maybe that's why Noon has actually seen you since you became a genin 2 months ago." Baki chuckled and Temari walked over and embraced him in a passionate kiss. She broke it apart and slammed her fan into his head and said, "How the hell did you convince Gaara to embarrass me like that, Narakan?" Naruto said, "Gave him all of Erosanen's books." Gaara said, "And I never been happier." Temari screamed and said, "You had him go into his Shikaku form outside the village and dance while you had the song play Walk This Way." Naruto said, "I still did not know you could do the split like that, Gaara, in your demon form." Gaara said, "It's a good thing I was 200 foot tall then, huh?" With a smile. Baki cleared his throat and looked around the room and said, "It's good to see you, Aegean Rin. Who are these ladies, if you don't mind?" Naruto said, "Relax, Baki, they won't tell anything. The one on the left is Anko and the right is Kurenai, my other 2 fiancés." Temari shot them a look judging them and walked over to them and said, "If either of you breaks his heart, I will kill you." Kurenai looked at the girl like she was stupid and Anko laughed and sighed, "Gaki, you got great taste in women. None of us take shit off of anyone." Baki cleared his throat and said, "Sorry, this is a business trip." Naruto nodded and said in a serious flat voice, "Go ahead, Baki." Temari was turned to listen to what was being said when 2 pair of arms grabbed her and dragged her away from the group. When they were far enough away, the 3 fiancés had a little talk. While that was happening, Gaara said, "A man came to our village proposing an alliance. Father actually has refused the deal but told the man he would accept so he could get more info. The man is from the Hidden Sound village." Naruto said, "He proposes that you join up with them to attack us during the Chunin exams." Baki said, "Your grandfather's spy network is as good as ever I see." Naruto nodded and said, "What else?" Gaara said, "He is acting like we are their allies, but he wants to warn you and your Hokage. That's all we have for now. We won't be able to come back until the exams. Naruto nodded and said, if what my grandfather's sources said is true, then they sound village plans to betray you also. They plan to kill your father and replace him around the time of the exams once you're committed. Be careful with that info and I will make sure we are also on our end. Baki nodded and said, we have to go. I wish we could stay, but we had to detour off another mission to get here to tell you. Noon outside this house has seen us. Gaara used his Shushin to bring us to your chakra when we got close enough. Sorry. Naruto nodded and walked over and slapped the package on Kankuro's back and said, CYA makeup. He then walked to Gaara and embraced him in a firm hug and said, take it easy bro, remember my warnings and don't let the village get to you. Gaara said, just make sure if you ever need my help to call. Naruto nodded and walked to Temari and said, I hate having to leave like this time. After the exams we can be together. Temari slammed her fan over his head and said, Baka, it's only a few months and you better keep your promise. Naruto nodded and said, like I promised. The honeymoon will be a month tour on my cruise line. We still have a whole year and a half to plan. Kurenai said, what are you both talking about? Naruto said, while I was away I bought a cruise line that goes to several tropical islands. I was planning on our honeymoons to be that, but it won't be until I can get my Jounin status, which will be a year and a half from now. Anko said, you are so sure you will be a Jounin then, huh? Naruto said, I could probably pass Jounin now, but I want to at least work with a Genin team for a little bit. Baki said, I'm sorry to cut this short, but we must be off. Naruto nodded and kissed Temari, and Gaara engulfed all four of them in sand. Rin said, is any day of your life normal? Naruto said, nope. The day I die they will throw a village-wide party. With a smile on his face. Anko said, so you going to tell the Hokage? Naruto nodded and Anko said, I hate to cut it short, but I have to meet Ibiki in less than an hour. Kurenai said, I need to go back and apologize to Asuma. When I heard you were back I kind of spilled my drink all over him. Rin said, the whole damn village heard he's back. I was having fun torturing Kakashi when he did that. Naruto said, then what are you doing here? Rin said, I had his mask and your song distracted me long enough for him to get away without me seeing his face. Naruto created a clone and flamed Shushin away only to reappear behind Anko and Kurenai, kissing them both. After he released them he said, I love you both and can't wait to see you Aegean. Anko said, you have to Gaki. Naruto said, why's that? Kurenai said, we talked to Temari and since we had to wait on you, now you have to wait on us. No kissing or dates until the exams when Temari comes to the village. With a smile as both their faces they left, laughing at the mock-hurt look on his face. Rin laughed as she walked out of the room also. Naruto sighed and said, why do women have to be so troublesome? On a hilltop across the village a lazy cloud watcher sneezes. The next day Naruto sighed as he walked into his classroom for team assignment. The moment he did all talking ended and he looked at everyone and said, yo, and walked to a seat near the back. All of them had went home to tell their parents what had happened. The reactions were unique. Let's take a look. Flashback Sakura. Sakura walked outside and her mother was there and said, hi mom, guess what? I passed. Mrs. Haruno said, great Sakura. Sakura said, we also had a new student arrive and guess what? He is the grandson of the Sannin Tsunade and Jiraiya. Mrs. Haruno looked at her shocked and said, Sakura dear, are you sure about that? Sakura said, well Jiraiya of the Sannins came in and said he was, and also said he was the son of some guy named Erashur Kazama. Who is that anyways? Mrs. Haruno had a bad feeling in her stomach and said, Sakura dear, what was the boy's name? Sakura said, oh Naruto Uzumaki Kazama. Why? Mrs. Haruno had a flash from 6 years earlier. Inoichi said, then perhaps whoever did was a better person than you. Goodbye. She could feel the lump in her stomach as she reheard that and glanced at Inoichi and saw him looking at her and smirked at her. End Sakura flash Inoichi. Ino walked over and screamed, Dad, I'm a ninja now, are you going to teach me any new jutsu now? Inoichi said, maybe princess. Who else passed? Ino said, well, I know Forehead did and so did Sasuke-kun and that new kid. What was his name? Oh yeah, the new kid Naruto Kazama. You know he seemed cocky and all. Especially when his grandfather busted through the window on a huge from. Inoichi looked at her first in shock at hearing Kazama, but then the frog could only be one person and he said, Why do you say the guy with the frog was his grandfather, and what did the Naruto look like? Ino said, well, Naruto had whiskers on his face and blonde hair and blue eyes, and the guy with the frog said he was, and he also said he was also the dad of Erashur Kazama, whoever that was. Inoichi smirked to himself and thought, "He'll be damn. No wonder the kid looked like Erashur." He then looked at Mrs. Haruno, recalling what he said years earlier, and smirked when she looked at him. Inoichi said, "Ino, you might want to get to know Naruto better. If he is anything like the rest of his family, he's going to do big things." Ino said, yeah, but not as big as Sasuke-kun. Flash end. The rest had similar reactions of shock and worry. When he sat down, Ino walked back to him and said, "What was that yesterday with those two women?" Naruto said, "Oh, that, just my fiancés saying hi," acting like it was a normal everyday thing. Sasuke walked back and said, "Fight me." Naruto looked over and said, "Hey Nara, is he always this troublesome?" Shikamaru blinked and said, "Yes. Do I know you?" Naruto said, "Not really, we met once before I left the village, but it was mostly in passing. It was about 6 years ago. In fact, I met most of the people in this room at least once. Sasuke, Sakura, Ino, Choji, Kiba, Hinata, Shino, and you Shikamaru." Ino said, "You have a good memory to remember our names from 6 years ago." Naruto said, "Yeah. Anyways, what you guys do for fun in this village?" As he pulls out a bottle of sake and pours him some. They all look at him and he said, "I am immune to alcohol, so I can't get drunk. Like everyone in my family, I just like the taste." Kiba said, "So Jiraiya and Tsunade is your grandparents and your dad is some guy named Erashur Kazama. Who is that anyways?" Naruto spit his sake out looking at him and said, "What the hell they teaching you nowadays? I figured they would have told you the Yondaime Hokage's real name." Looking shocked as everyone in the classroom relished what he meant. Sakura said, "It must be great coming from so many famous people." Ino said, "Who is your mom? Is she as famous as the others?" Naruto said, "Actually she is famous and a ninja, but she's famous for being an author. Her author name is Bichi Rin." Looking at the class as several of the girls in class recognized the name, and Naruto smirks to himself. Kiba said, "I don't know a Bichi Rin." Looking confused. Naruto said, "You wouldn't. She only writes books for females and your family doesn't talk about her." Kiba said, "How do you know that?" Naruto said, "Because if they haven't told you about your aunt by now they want." And he drinks another sip of sake just as Irika walks in with Shizune, and Naruto screams, "Hide the sake," as he puts his away, making Shizune red in the face. Shizune said, "Shut it, Nizun." Sakura said, "Are you related to him also?" Shizune said, "It's honorary. My master Tsunade is his grandmother." Irika said, "Okay class. Mizuki won't be joining us anymore because he had an accident, so Shizune here is his temporary replacement." Okay, teams are as follows. Team 7 Sakura, Sasuke, Naruto. Sakura said, "Why is the new kid on our team?" Naruto said, "I was not here to do book tests, so my grades are a 0, but since I was trained anyways I pass, and the highest book grades and lowest are put together." Irika said, "Exactly right. Now Team 8 is Kiba, Shino, and Hinata. Team 10 is Ino, Choji, and Shikamaru. Your teachers will be here sure." Just then a man with gray hair and his high 8 covering one eye bursts through the door and slams it shut, leaning against it panting. Everyone's sweat drops, and suddenly a voice on the other side of the door said, "Kakashi-kun, come out wherever you are." Kakashi looked around the room and saw Naruto and said, "Yo, I was trying to get lost on the road of life when I ran into trouble. Team 7, Im Kakashi and Im your sensei. First lesson, stop this mad woman. After that, meet me on the roof." Naruto looked at him and said, "You're on your own, Kakashi. I only fear 6 women, and one is in the front of the class and one is on the other side of that door." Sasuke said, "Whatever, loser," and got up and walked to the door as Kakashi got up and ran out the window. Sasuke reached to open the door only for it to bust off the henges and hit him in the face. Rin walked in and said, "I have got to thank Tsunade for that technique. Now where is Kakashi?" Naruto said, "He went out the window, mom." Everyone's sweat dropped, and Ino said, "What kind of dysfunctional life do you have?" Naruto said, "The best kind. Let's meet on the roof." And he got up, walking over the down Sasuke. He was about to walk through the now doorless door when 2 figures walked in. Asuma looked around and said, "What happened here?" Naruto said, "My mom is determined to remove Kakashi mask. She did that." Asuma said, "Who is your mom, Naruto?" Kurenai said, "Kakashi old teammate Rin." Asuma looked at her and she said, "What?" Asuma said, "How do you know that?" Kurenai said, "Why wouldn't I know my future mother-in-law?" Making everyone sweat drop. Naruto said, "Good to see you, Aegean Senseiheim." Kurenai said, "Don't forget no more until your other fiancé comes back." Naruto sighed and said, "Don't torture you students too much," and walks over and kicks Sasuke and said, "Get up, bastard." Sasuke groans as Ino and Sakura scream at Naruto for hurting Sasuke, but he ignores it. Asuma looks at Kurenai and said, "How the hell did you and him get together?" Kurenai said, "Long story short, he makes me happy. Besides, I'm the tame on of his 3 fiancés." Asuma fell on his butt and said, "3, who are the other 2? Naruto, who was walking by with Sasuke and Sakura, said, "Oh, just the daughter of the Kazekage and Anko," as he walks by them, ignoring the shocked look on Asuma's face. Asuma clears his throat and said, "Right, Team 10 with me." Kurenai said, "Team 8 with me." And they both left with their teams. When Team 7 arrived on the roof, they sweat dropped. Kakashi was hanging upside down with his hands and feet tied together like a rodeo animal. Kakashi looked at them and said, "Well, Team 7, I'm Kakashi and I'm your sensei. I would have you tell me about you and then give you a stupid test tomorrow to see if you're ready to actually be a ninja, but out of fear I won't, so meet at the Hokage office 7 a.m. and don't be late cause I want permission." Dismissed. Just then Kakashi went up in smoke and Rin, who was holding the rope, said, "Damn it. I thought I had him this time." And she took off going to find Kakashi. Sakura looked at Naruto and said, "Why is she so determined to see his face?" Naruto said, "Nobody has seen Kakashi FCE since the day he was born. She is determined to do it first." Sakura said, "Why first?" Naruto said, "Hers and Jiraiya's publisher has offered a $1 billion reward for a picture of Kakashi face without his mask. Since then, she has vowed to be the first." Sakura said, "Why does their publisher want that so bad, and how do you know anyways?" Naruto said, "Well, my father wanted it done and I am the publisher of both companies that publish their book. Soon the secret will be revealed. Ha ha ha." Sasuke said, "You a weakling who is an idiot." Sakura said, "What he said." Naruto said, "To each his own. CYA." And flamed Shushin away. The only people who know Naruto has had multiple lifetimes is the third, Anko, Kurenai, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune, and Rin. They all have sworn secrecy not to tell to keep from screwing the timeline up. Kakashi never knew Kurenai and Anko were actually condensuring relationship with Naruto before he left or until he came back. When asked about the rings, both ladies would say it was a late birthday present from a friend. Kakashi also does not know how strong Naruto is or been to his house up to this point. Temari also has seen Naruto's memories of her, but he made her swear not to tell even her brothers. After she saw what happens with Gaara and everything, she agrees out of respect. And notes. There is an old saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It has been 1 month since Naruto became a genin. Team 7 changed a little at first. Actually, just the first day would be more accurate, and it started like this. Naruto arrived where his team was supposed to meet at the Hokage office. Kakashi was there already with a mission scroll and said, "Okay. Now that you are all here, our mission is to catch the Fire Lord's cat Tora. Let's go." They followed him outside and walked to where the cat liked to go after it escaped. Sakura saw the cat and screamed, "Sasuke-kun. There it is." Pointing to the cat. The cat saw them and started to run. Sasuke and Sakura started after it, and Kakashi looked at them and then at Naruto and said, "You know you need to help your team, right?" Naruto said, "I know, but I also know something else." Kakashi said, "What's that?" Naruto said, "This." And he created 10 cage bunshin and had them turn into a male cat and had them start chasing Tora. Kakashi sweat dropped and said, "What will that do?" Naruto smirked and said, "You ever see what a cat will do when it's in heat but don't want to be messed with? Especially when male cats are after it." Kakashi said, "No." Naruto said, "Watch." 20 seconds later, "Goddamn you, you fucking cat. I am going to kill you." Sasuke screamed. "Get OFF of Sasuke-kun's face, you stupid cat." Sakura screamed, and both of them came back into the clearing with the cat still scratching Sasuke. Kakashi looked at Naruto and said, "That was mean." Naruto said, "When in that situation, the cat will go for the highest point it could get. This case was Sasuke face." Kakashi sighed as the cats continued to claw Sasuke. They made their way back to the tower and turned in the cat. Kakashi looked around and said, "Well, that was a good start, but we need to work on our teamwork." Dismissed. And he left in a swirl of leaves. When Naruto got home, he heard something echoing throughout the house and started looking. He found the room that it was coming from, and it was his mom's room. He started to reach for the doorknob until he heard, "Harder. Harder. I want more. Give it to me, Kakashi. I'm almost there. I'm going to." Naruto paled at that and started to back away. Unfortunately, that triggered a tripline he failed to see and was suddenly hit in the back by a giant rubber mallet and knocked into the door. When he hit the door, he flew through it. The door, instead of opening like a regular door, had a bar going through it that caused it to flip over like a fan blade and caused Naruto to fly into his mom's room. Once inside, his legs were wrapped in ninja wire and he was pulled upside down. Once he was upside down, he was hit in the face with a whipped cream pie. After the pie fell off, he was covered in honey flour and feathers. After he finally stopped moving and the traps were done, he looked over and saw his mom sitting in a beach chair drinking a glass of tea, and beside her was Kakashi, also sitting in a beach chair with his arms crossed, and you could tell he was smiling behind that damn mask. Rin looked at Naruto and said, "So is my editor gonna call off the little bounty on Kakashi face?" Naruto sighed and said, "Yes. How long have you both been setting this up?" Rin said, "From the moment you left Kakashi house the day we arrived. The little act at the school and Kakashi being on time was all a ploy to trick you, son." Naruto said, "Damn it. Fine, you win." Kakashi said, "By the way, I like your library. I got a few jutsu out of it. How many do you know?" Naruto said, "Enough. Which ones?" Kakashi nodded and said, "Your mom let me look at them and I only picked 2 Raitun jutsu. I already know so many, I don't really want any new ones. I did pick Raitun, Thundershock, and Raitun, Dragon Missile. I am curious how you got the Chidori though." Naruto said, "Dad left me a copy of all the jutsu in the Forbidden Scroll and Chidori was in it. I can do it, but only 1 time a day. My affinities are wind, earth, water, and wood. Also, the reason there are so many jutsu in there since the Kazama Estates was destroyed and I did not want to mess with the idiots too much, I started a new family jutsu library. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Shizen gave me a lot of jutsu, and in our travels I would buy or trade some low-level jutsu I had bought with money I won off of Tsunade. I probably only know enough to make me a Chunin though. I got tree climbing and water walking down." Kakashi nodded and said, "I like the idea of starting a family library since you got 2 of the most sought-after women in the village going to marry you, I hear. I don't know how the hell you pulled that one off. I also hear you got a 3rd one from another village. It's good you know some decent jutsu then, as well as the chakra exercises. Now I don't really have to train your team. As you probably guess, I only originally became a sensei to train the Uchiha because of the council. After I saw you were back, I was actually going to train you, but seeing as you already are probably Jounin status and knowledge and just need experience, I will go back to doing what I want. If you need any real help though, let me know. Thanks again for the laughs, Rin. I hope we can do it again sometimes." Naruto said, "Do me one favor please. Don't teach him Rasengan or Chidori. I know all about his brother and his mental instability." The 3rd sent some info to the old hag and Erosanin about it. "I think if he sees someone who might be truly stronger than him, he might try and kill them." Kakashi nodded and said, "I agree with you, and I would never teach anyone Rasengan. As far as I'm concerned, that is your and your clan's, even though I do have to wonder how you know I knew Rasengan." Naruto said, "Jiraiya, when he was teaching me, said I asked a question about the control you had mentioned when trying to work on a jutsu. He knew just by that discussion which one it had to be." Kakashi nodded and sighed. "I need to be going." Rin said, "Sure thing, Kakashi. We'll have dinner sometime." So I ate Kakashi. Kakashi left in a swirl of leaves and Rin said, "You may have your father's looks, but I gave you your prankster side, son. Don't mess with a master." And she cut him down and said, "Now clean up the mess," as she walked out the room. After that, missions with Team 7 went like they originally would. Kakashi was 3 hours late, but instead of getting lost on the road of life, he was with Rin hanging out and enjoying company, though it was just friends. Missions were boring, except Naruto almost always found a way to speed them up or show he was better than Sasuke, which made him pissed. Sakura had spent all her time following Sasuke, and yet she failed to notice him getting upset. Kurenai and Anko had both been avoiding him, but not to be mean. No, Anko was getting a lot of ABNU mission size. She was part of Ibiki's interrogation department. When Mizuki tried to break in to steal the Forbidden Scroll, he was caught quickly by an anonymous tip. After that, Ibiki was able to break him, and they got a few leads on Orochimaru dealings and a few other shady people. Kurenai would have seen Naruto, but Hinata was kicked out of the Hyuga compound by her father. Without Naruto presence originally to give her courage, she was even more depressed and mentally weak. Kurenai had her move into her house to keep an eye on her. It just was dumb luck that she was kicked out on graduation day from the academy. When her father heard the Uchiha had beaten her in class was the final straw. Naruto sent them flowers and gifts, and also whenever he saw either in passing stopping to see how they were doing. Anko's free time was mostly sleeping and catching up the things that had to be done in everyday life, so she was not happy about that, but the occasional run-ins with Naruto helped. Anko also, because of the memory genjutsu she had, was able to also get more info from suspected traitors. Kurenai had been helping Hinata with her confidence and did not want to be distracted helping the poor girl out, so Naruto gave them privacy, but the run-ins still helped them know they still loved each other. Somehow the council heard about Naruto claims to be the Yandame's son, and the Hokage was forced to tell the truth. After that, it also became knowledge of who his grandparents were as well as his bloodline. The reactions were mixed, and some of the council tried to use their power to have some control put on him. Flashback. The council was divided about how powerful Naruto might be. Those who still hated him because of the Kyuubi tried to get rid of him, and they were now discussing the issue. A civilian said, "He is a threat and the demon could be take over." Inoichi said, "The Yandame would not have took a risk like that with his own flesh and blood if he was not sure it would hold." Danzo said, "He should be properly trained and turned into a weapon of the village." Tsunade and Jiraiya, who were in their clan seats, as well as Rin for the Kazama clan, were becoming pissed, and Tsunade said, "Enough. I am saying this once and only once. Any actions to harm him or anyone close to him will invoke the laws of this village charter, and our clan will use its authority." Danzo said, "What nonsense is this?" The third, already being aware of this from Naruto, said, "Tsunade's clan owns everything from the south gates to the academy and the Hokage Mountain. No matter what buildings are on it, they own all rights to them, including the building we are in. If they so choose, they can force everyone who lives or own business in them to leave and have the backing of the Fire Lords and the other clans of Konoha that would be forced to side with them or lose all right to their lands and homes. In other words, it would be anyone who is on their lands against the clans of Konoha. As for making him a weapon, Danzo, he is also protected by the same laws, so you can't touch him. Funny thing is, the council member who called him a demon a few minutes ago could be executed for breaking my law, but I think I would rather tell you this. By the time he is 16, the demon inside him will be gone." End flashback. After that, things calmed down some. A few people left town, but nobody important. The major speed bump was about a week after team assignments. Flashback. Rin was at the grocery store getting supplies for the family. She was getting ready to check on when she smelled something and turned and saw her sister standing at the doorway leaning on the doorframe with her arms looking at her. After getting her stuff, she pulled out a scroll Naruto had made and set it on the counter and put the items on top of it, and all the items automatically sealed inside it. Picking up the scroll, she walked over to her sister. Sum said, "So I see my little sister finally returned. I heard some interesting things from my son." Rin said, "Really, sister, what would those be?" Acting all innocent and not knowing what she might mean, Sum narrowed her eyes and said, "Is it true you married the Yandame and had that little mutt?" Rin said, Well, I see someone's still upset that her younger sister was better than her at everything and was going to be clan head. I mean, I beat you at all of our little spars. Next I find a man who is better than almost all men, and then I have a son who's even better than yours, and you can't handle it. Perhaps I'm not the biggest bitch anymore, or maybe I should put you down for good." As she turned to walk away smirking, Sum was pissed at her sister and extended her nails with chakra and swipped at Rin, who ducked under the swipe and grabbed Sum by the hair and said, "Guess I am after all the biggest bitch, runt," and kicked her in the face, sending her into the air, grabbing her feet and throwing her head first into the ground. Sum slowly got up, panting with a busted nose and a smile, and said, "It's good to see you're still tough as ever, sis. I'm still sorry for what the clan did. I think you made the right choice. You and Naruto should come by sometime. I wish I would have known back then he was your son, though. I could have protected him." Rin smiled and said, "We might, but give us a little time. We are still settling back in. Also, it's probably best you did not know. If you would have protected him, it could have started a clan war, and you had to think about what's best for the pack. It's good to." Just then, for Abianu appeared, and a horse-faced one said, "What's going on here? Are you causing trouble, Kazama?" With venom is his voice. Sum said, "Relax, Abianu, or I might just have the Hokage bust you back to Genin for messing with me and my sister." The horse Abinu flinched and said, "Just don't disturb the peace any longer or I will run you both in." Rin snorted and said, "Please, you could not even touch us, much less run us both in." The horse Abinu said, "We shall see, mark my words." And with that all four of them left and Rin and Sum both started laughing and Rin said, "Don't mess with the big dogs." Sum laughed and said, "Especially when they are a pair of bitches like us. Well, I have to go. CYA around sometime, sis." And left in a swirl of leaves. End flashback. Naruto sighed as he was standing bored in the Hokage's office and the third said, "Right, Team 7. I think you are ready for a higher rank mission. It's an escort mission. Send him in." An old man with a bottle of sake walked in and said, "Is this all I get for my money?" The blonde looks like he's about to fall asleep. As he raises his bottle to take a drink only to have it disappear. Suddenly, before anyone could tell an HHHH, that was good. Was heard and everyone saw Naruto turning the sake bottle upside down empty. Sakura said, "Are you sure you're not an alcoholic?" Naruto snorted and said, "Like I told you, it's physically impossible for me to get drunk. I just really like the taste and the old man has spilt more of the sake on his cloths than he has in his mouth. I just hated to see it go to waste." Tazana was wide-eyed but quickly hit it and said, "Right. My name is Tazana and I have a bridge to build. You are to protect me back home and until the bridge is complete." Kakashi nodded and said, "Right. Meet at the west gate in 1 hour." Just then teammate walked in and Kiba said, "Mission complete." He looked over and said, "Hey Kaus, you ready to see who's top dog yet?" Naruto snorted and said, "Chunin exams Kaus, we got a C-rank mission to head on." Kiba screamed, "What? I demand that we also get one Hokage-sama." The Hokage looked at the teams and said, "I'm sorry, but we don't have any more missions for you, a Genin team today." Naruto cleared his throat and said, "Hokage-sama, perhaps it would be a good chance to work on our teamwork with another team. Who knows what we might encounter on this mission." The third narrowed his eyes in thought and Sasuke said, "Dobe, we don't need another team to slow us down. You just want them to go so you can go with your WH." He was cut off by a focus shot of Ki coming from Naruto and said in a neutral voice, "Sasuke, we are teammates and I value your skills and opinions on mission-related items but never insult a friend or someone precious to me. I did not make the suggestion for personal reason. If I had, I would have requested a mission with Saraheim also. No, the reason I stated is what I meant. We may sometime have to work with another team and if we never get experience in doing that then who knows what will happen when we actually need it." Cutting the Ki. The third said, "I agree that Naruto does raise a valid point and it would be good." Naruto turned toward the village gate's directions fast enough to make everyone think an attack was happening when he jumped back 5 feet from where he was standing and a swirl of sand appeared in the Hokage office and a very pissed-off-looking Gaara was standing in the office. The third said, "What is the meaning of this interruption and who are you?" As everyone was getting into a defensive position. Naruto said, "Gaara, what are you doing here and why alone?" Gaara said, "Brother, we need to talk privately now." Naruto nodded and said, "Hokage-sama, can we have a few minutes to talk? Gaara is the Kazekage's son, and if he is here it's important." The third nodded and said, "Would everyone leave the room but Naruto and Gaara?" Everyone nodded and left with Tazuna, and when the door closed Naruto said, "What's wrong?" Gaara said, "Your information was correct. The Sound Village did plan to kill my father. He was able to defend himself, agents 20 of Theer men. He survived because my team was on our way back when I sensed his chakra fighting others. Temari and Kankuro are both in the hospital in Suna right now, and the only thing keeping us from declaring an all-out war on them now is because there have been an attempt on my family's life in the hospital already. They just have chakra exhaustion, so don't worry. We were told that we either help them destroy you or an assassin will get our family." Naruto's fists were opening and closing and the third said, "What does the Kazekage plan to do now?" Gaara said, "We plan to go with the plan we are with them but aid you and your village when the time comes, but we also plan to aid Kazama clan since we have an alliance with them." The third sighed and said, "Very well. I trust that since are here and the only person who could detect you in advance was Naruto, then that means this is a secret mission." Gaara nodded and Naruto said, "Right Gaara. Tell Temari. I love her and can't wait to see her and I promise you brother, we will get them." Gaara just shook his head once and was gone in a swirl of sand. The third sighed and said, "Orochimaru must be desperate to try and blackmail the Kazekage." Naruto nodded and said, "The fact he is still alive now mean that my information is not as reliable. Probably the fact Tsunade and Jiraiya are here permanently has him on edge, and he knows he needs a major distraction like Shikaku to help him. The third nodded and said, I understand, and we will still prepare with the info you gave me. He can't change too much of his plans or he runs the risk of us finding out. The assassination attempts must be a backup plan. Go ahead and bring everyone back in. I will make up a story. Naruto nodded and got everyone, and the third said, sorry about the interruption. Now Team 7, go ahead with your mission as planned. Team 8, I would send you with Team 7, but I need your team for a mission that just came up. I will have the further details later for tomorrow. As for our guest, do not mention he was here. Sasuke said, why was he here and why did the dobe here get to stay and I didn't? Naruto said, he's here because my grandfather sent a present to my fiancée who is his sister and he came to defend her honor. He was still opening his hand and closing it, but only the third and Kakashi and Kurenai noticed it. Kakashi said, right, meet at the south gates in 1 hour, dismissed. And he left in a swirl of leaves. Naruto turned to Kiba and said, see ya, dog breath. Till we meet, Aegean Senseiheim. Kissing her hand, making everyone sweat drop except Sakura, who was screaming kawaii, and Kurenai, who blushed. Actually, the third and Kakashi were having perverted giggles and Hinata looked on with mixed feeling of loneliness and self-doubt. He then left in a swirl of flames to get ready. Sasuke said, I demand someone tell me how he does that. Kurenai said, only he can do that. It has to do with his bloodline. Sasuke said, then it's useless. And walked off to get ready, Sakura following to also get ready. When Naruto arrived at the south gates, his team and Tazuna was already there. Naruto attire had changed though. He had on a pair of black blue jean shorts and a jounin-type vest with his sword strapped on his back. Sasuke looked over and said, do you really know how to use that thing or is it for show? Naruto said, you won't know unless I need it. As he took off toward Wave. Sakura said, Naruto, get back here, you don't know the way to Wave Country. Naruto said, actually Sakura, I was there about 4 years ago. Some guy named Gato was trying to buy all the shipping rights at the time. What a dickhead. And enjoyed the reaction to the name Gato from Tazuna as everyone continued the mission. About 2 hours later, Naruto saw a puddle of water in the road and stopped and said, hey Bevis and Butthead, get you asses out of there or Zabuza gonna kick you asses or I might do it for him. Aegean. Sakura and Sasuke looked at him like he was crazy and Kakashi was sweat dropping. Suddenly the puddle shifted and 2 men slowly rose out of it and looked pale and said, Naruto, what are you doing here, in a stuttery voice. Naruto snorted and said, okay. Who's the idiot who hired Zabuza? The taller one said, Gato, he hired us to kill the old man there. Please don't kill us. Naruto said, Kakashi, talk to the client please and see if he can tell us anything else. Me and my colleges are gonna have a little chat. Kakashi nodded and said, you know they're missing Nin's right. Naruto said, they are also spies for Jiraiya. Kakashi nodded and Naruto said, tell Zabuza and Haku to meet us on the road when we get to Wave and don't try any of that scare shit or I will bitch slap both of them. Now go. And both men nodded before jumping away, walking over to Kakashi and said, we got an inside informant later. Kakashi said, you know I will have to take you in when we get back to face the Hokage. Naruto said, yes, but I'm going to talk Zabuza into coming back with us. Kakashi said, why did they act so scarred around you? Sasuke stormed over before he had a chance to say anything and said, hey Dobe, how come you told Kakashi what to do and what was up with those guys? How did you know they were there? Naruto sweat dropped and said, Sakura, when was the last time it rained? Sakura said, 2 weeks ago, why? Naruto said, and how long do you think a puddle of water could last with the heat we had the past 2 weeks on a road? Causing both of them to sweat drop. Naruto muttered, idiots, and continued walking and Kakashi said, we don't have to continue the mission since the client lied. Naruto said, question Kakashi, what was Tazana's reaction when I mentioned Gato when we left the village 2 hours ago? Kakashi said, truthfully, I don't know. Naruto slapped his forehead and faster than anyone could see the book in Kakashi's hand was vaporized in flames, and a click was heard coming from Naruto, who was removing his hand from his sword. It left 3 people with their mouths open and Kakashi weeping on the ground. They continued on their mission. Naruto smiled as he thought back to 1 year ago. Flashback. Naruto was currently in Rain Country working on a modified Rasengan that could incorporate ice. Since he has an affinity to wind and water and earth, he can make wood out of earth and water or ice out of wind and water, but that is also harder. He was getting ready to take a break when he felt a presence arrive and said, Hello, stranger. Can I help you with something? A person who looked like a girl walked over and said, I was wondering, are you able to do that because of a bloodline? Naruto said, yes and no, Haku. As he turned to her, Haku asked, how do you know my name? Naruto smiled and said, my name is Naruto Kazama, and I am the son of Erashur Kazama the Yellow Flash. My grandfather is the Toad Sannin Jiraiya and also one of my teachers. I have currently training but have yet to find a Kenjutsu teacher to help me with my style, and I am also looking for someone to help with ice jutsu. My grandfather was able to discover through his spy network about you and him. I have a scroll for you and your master for a proposal as well as a small sign of my interest. Fear is $100,000 sealed with the proposal as well as instructions to meet me and him to discuss the deal face to face. I just was waiting till I found you to give it. May I? Pointing toward his pocket. Haku, who was reaching for her senbons and also starting one-hand signs, nodded, and Naruto slowly reached for a scroll and pulled it out, handing it to her with both hands so she could see he was not attacking. Haku slowly reached for it and Naruto flame-shushin away. The next day Jiraiya and Naruto were at the same spot when Zabuza walked over with Haku and said, so what exactly is this deal? Naruto said, simple. I am currently on a training trip with my family, and as I told Haku, I am the son of Erashur Kazama, the Yellow Flash of Konoha. As you already know, my father had a lot of enemies and who would like nothing more than to kill me for being his son. I will not live a life afraid, so I am learning from the best in each field I can. Jiraiya here. My grandfather has heard of you and your assistant, and one of the 7 swordsmen would be a great Kenjutsu teacher, and I would also like to learn a few ice jutsu since I can use ice as well as wood. I propose a 1-month lesson to help me with my style. In exchange, you will receive $500,000 divided into 1 quarter each week of the month. At the end of the month, Jiraiya would also like to offer you a yearly bonus of $100,000 per year on any info you come across that would affect either the Kazama family or Konoha. Simple knowledge, and you can just send it through a secure messenger. You can also tell Twiddledee and Dumb in the woods behind me I can kill them easily, as I had this place set in case you decided to attack first and ask question later. So Demon of the Mist, what do you say? I will even have my grandmother throw in some medical jutsu for Haku there for free. Zabuza looked at him and said, who's your grandmother? A person walked out of the woods and said, my name is Tsunade of the Sannins. Zabuza paled and said, kid, I like your style, having 2 of the world's most dangerous people train you and then wanting me also. Fine, but only after you fight me in a Kenjutsu battle to see if you have any skills. End flashback. Naruto chuckled to himself as they kept walking. About 5 o'clock that evening, an ice mirror appeared in the middle of the road and out stepped 2 people, and Kakashi was about to say something when Naruto said, so I see your nose is fixed, huh, Zabuza? Zabuza said, I still don't know how the hell you pulled that one off, kid. So what do you want? Naruto said, simple, what's dipshit paying you? Zabuza said, 10,000. Why? Naruto said, he got any kind of security beside you and your men. Zabuza said, about 200 merc. Not much for someone like you. Naruto mocked hurt and said, well, sorry for pissing the Mist Village off. Zabuza started to laugh and said, is that what you called it? You know they gave you a nickname for disposing of over 1,200 ninja in one attack. They have a bounty on your head for $2 billion. Kakashi looking at Naruto and asked, what are they calling him? Naruto sighed and said, I guess I will have to tell the story. It all started when I was getting ready to finish my training under Zabuza. Flashback. Zabuza. Okay, kid. Let's see what you feel that. Naruto turned toward the village they were staying in and said, yes. Feels like someone's getting ready to attack. They both took off toward the village, and when they got there they saw the entire village was surrounded by Mist Ninja. Naruto said, shit, my family and Haku's in there. We have to help them. Zabuza said, what do you got in mind? It looks like most of Mist is here. Naruto looked at the field and said, you see any women in the group, Zabuza? Zabuza looked at him and said, no, why? Naruto got a fox grin, and Zabuza done learned meant he was going to do something. Naruto said, I got an idea, but Gambunta's going to kill my grandfather later. And he hinged into Jiraiya and quickly summoned Gambunta. Gambunta said, what do you want, pervert? Nar/Jiraiya said, I need you to perform a combination transformation, Combi Henge, to save the village, in Jiraiya voice. Gambunta nodded and Nar/Jiraiya changed. End flashback. Zabuza interrupts and said, He had music start playing all over the area, singing him too sexy as he turned the frog into a 200-foot nude blonde female with pigtails and only being barely covered with 2 whiffs of smoke. The entire army was knocked out from blood loss. That is how he became known as the sexy blonde. Naruto smiled as everyone looked at him and he said, "What can I say? If you got it, use it." Zabuza said, "So you obviously did not call me here for a social call. What do you want?" Naruto sighed and said, "I will triple what Gato's paying you to act hurt until the bridge is almost complete and keep an eye out on the little pest. Should something change, Haku knows how to get to me. When you decide to attack, put frost on the windows of the house. We draw Gato out. You help us kill him and his men, you get paid, Wave gets bridge. Everyone's happy but Gato. Then you and your men can decide on joining Konoha since your term is almost up, or you can continue being a missing nin and we still pay you for your service." Zabuza nodded and said, "Fine. See you soon, kid." As he left, Sakura said, "He's pulling our leg, right?" Naruto smirked and said, "I will let you wonder about that, let's go." Naruto was pissed as he looked at the last 3 men in front of him who all stood ready to attack, and he asked himself, "How the hell did I get myself into this shit? Oh yeah, the little dipshit over there." Looking at the Gato standing behind his 200 merc. Flashback. After Team 7 made it to Tazana's house, everyone was watching him and Sasuke was brooding as usual. Since Kakashi did not have to fight, he decided to begin tree climbing early. Since Naruto already knew it, he got guard duty for the week. The week went by quickly. Unfortunately, the damn Uchiha prick had activated his Sharingan, making him think he's a god. The only reason he activated it was when he was doing the tree climbing, he let his anger flare and blew himself off the tree and toward the Sakura, who was on the ground admiring her crush after her first time up the tree, trimming her fingernails with a kunai so she could look nice for him. When she heard the explosion, she looked up and stuck her kunai upwards, making it look like she was attacking him. Unfortunately, thanks to the pink-haired bimbo, when Sasuke saw it, he got scared and activated it, allowing himself to dodge. The bridge was almost complete when Zabuza and Haku arrived and looked like shit. Naruto asked, "What happened and where's the brothers?" Zabuza, who was being treated by Haku, said, "That damn prick Gato heard when they came and told me and Haku you were coming. He double-crossed us and sent for ninja from the mist and told them I was here also with you. They attacked us and there was 20 of them, but we got some of them, but the rest will be coming for you probably at the bridge." Kakashi sighed and said, "Will you help us?" Zabuza said, "Yes. The kid here has helped us many times and I would like to see Gato pay for this." Sakura asked, "Why are you helping them, Naruto?" "They're missing nin." Zabuza said, "I am only a missing nin after the Mizukage began to fear the 7 swordsmen. The people started to respect us more than him, so he attacked us with his personal guards. I don't know if any of the others survived, but after that we went on the run and he said we attacked him. That's why I am a missing nin. I plan to return and clear our name and remove the Mizukage, but sadly looks like it won't happen." Naruto said, "Sakura, what was the first lesson Kakashi tried to teach us? Look underneath the underneath. Not everything is as it appears." After explained how he had overheard Zabuza and the demon brothers talking about the sexy blonde and how he had heard about the reward for him. Being the greedy little shit he is, he sent a message to Mist, and now the rest you can say is history. Of the 20 that came, 12 Jounins from Mist came with Gato this morning. Zabuza and Haku had stayed wanting revenge for the demon brothers who were killed by the mist and also to help kill the little shithead. When Kakashi saw everything, he had Sasuke and Sakura watching over Tazuna and his family behind them on the bridge. Not taking the chance of an ambush at their home, he had brought them. Kakashi took 4, as did Zabuza, and Haku took 5 together, and Naruto got the last 3. Oh, did I forget to mention the mercs who are all looking on wanting to enter the fight also. Flashback end. Naruto calmed his emotions and started doing one-hand signs behind his back as he reached for his sword with the other hand, and a Miss Jounin with red hair said, "Oh, you want to see how well you can fight all 3? His words were cut off as his head was suddenly sent flying across the ground. His 2 companions jumped away from him because a clone of Naruto was standing behind him with a sword clicking as it was resheathed. Naruto smirked as the 2 Jounins used the hidden mist jutsu and covered the entire area around the bridge. Naruto and Zabuza both thought idiots as they both screamed from inside the mist. 8 points, liver, lungs, spine, jugular vein, carotid artery, brain, kidneys and heart. Which one should I go for? Suddenly the sound of screams and metal against metal was heard and nobody was sure who was doing what. Sakura wanted to faint. Sasuke wanted to know what was happening, but with the mist and his Sharingan he only saw the hidden mist jutsu. Kakashi sweat drops as he dodges a Kuniya ask, Zabuza, did you really teach him silent killing? Through the mist. Zabuza, who grunted from his attack, said, Yeah, I taught the little shit to well. He's the only person who can beat me in it. Feels like he is evening the numbers though. His voice coming from everywhere. The Miss Jounins stopped and got back to back when they heard this and had one thought going through their head. Crap. And dropped the mist just as they head up. The sight that greet them was something they had not expected to see. When Sakura saw it, she threw up and Sasuke became even more pissed. Tazuna fainted. Tsunami looked green and Inari was shocked. Zabuza was standing with his sword in the chest of one of the ninja. He was fighting with two headless bodies on the ground beside him. A dome of ice mirrors was slowly falling as Haku stepped out and two men were on the ground at her feet. Kakashi had stabbed a Kuniya in the neck of one of his enemies and was holding off another as the last two were standing back to back prepared for an attack. Naruto, who was standing behind Gato, said, Ah man, you just ruined my fun. As Gato's eyes got big realizing the voice came from behind him and all of his merc were dead, each with a different point, Naruto and Zabuza called out. Gato started to scream and run away, but Naruto picked him up and said, Kakashi, raise a blast from the past for you. And formed a Rasengan in his hand in less than a second and slammed it into Gato's back, propelling him forward toward the Miss Jounin, screaming before he died. Kakashi's eyes got big as a silver dollar. He was not sure if Naruto could use it yet, but knew Jiraiya would teach it to him sooner or later. When Naruto showed it in the Hokage office, Kakashi was passed out. Naruto looked at the 5 remaining Miss Jounin. Haku and Zabuza had already killed Tier 5 and the one Naruto killed. The 3 remaining ones Kakashi had been fighting looked tired and beat up, but not as bad as Kakashi. Naruto looked at them and said, So, do you still want to fight or do you want to run back to the Mizukage and tell him of your failure? A black-haired one that was going to fight Naruto charged at Naruto only to have a Senbon land in his neck, knocking him out. Sasuke finally screamed, Why can't I copy that jutsu? I demand you tell me how to do it and why I could not copy it. Everyone ignored him and Kakashi looked at the last 4 and said, It looks like we are in a stalemate. Your choice. The Naruto that was standing behind his last remaining enemy turned into a puddle of water and Naruto started to walk toward the rest of the group. The Miss Jounin got in a triangle back to back and said, We have orders not to return without both Zabuza head and the blonde. He made the hidden mist a laughing stock of the great nations. Naruto, who laughed at this, turned cold, narrowing his eyes and said, All I did was stop your village from making slaves of a village full of innocent people. I did not even harm one of your ninja but showed everyone they are perverts. You should call yourself lucky I did not do what I did to IWA then. You know me as sexy blonde, which flatters me. IWA knows me as the second flash of death. I killed 40 of their ninja in 2 minutes, a little over a month after what I did to you for trying to get revenge for what my father did to them. They tried poisoning my family while we were his rain country. I am immune to all poisons, but I detected it along with the rest of my family. When they came to get rid of our bodies, they learned one lesson quick. Leave the Kazama family alone. I am the second person in history to ever get a flea on sight order and I am only 13 years old. My father was the first. Tell you Kage to learn from this or next time I won't hold my friend here back from killing you all. As the heir to the Kazama family, I give Zabuza and Haku the protection of the Kazama clan. Now get out of my sight. As his eyes turned red, a voice in the middle of the group said, Before I get pissed. And everyone was shocked because another water clone had appeared right in the middle of the 3 ninja. The 3 Jounin were actually scared and quickly jumped off the bridge and started running on the water below away from the bridge. Naruto sighed and released the water clone and Kakashi looked at him and said, Was that true what you said about IWA? Naruto said, Yes, we were on the border of rain and wind. I was getting ready to see my fiancé in wind and somehow they got word about me and my family being together. They decided to take us all out in one strike. They tried to poison our food but with 3 of the best medics in the world. Me who is immune like I said and Erosanin, we all detected it. Sasuke came over and tried to punch Naruto. Keyword tried. Naruto ducked at the last second, grabbed Sasuke's arm, pulled it behind his back and tripped him, making his face smack the bridge. Naruto said, Why did you try and attack me, team? Sasuke was even more pissed but could not get up to fight because Naruto had sat on his back and keeping him from making hand signs. Sasuke said, Answer my question. Why could I not copy that jutsu you used? I need it to. Naruto said, Kill Itachi. I know all about your brother and what he did. You're giving me a headache. Now sleep tight, team. and hit a pre-sure point on his neck, knocking him out. As he stood up, Sakura came over screaming at Naruto for hurting Sasuke, and Haku got pissed and hit her with a sunbon needle as well. Naruto sighed and said, "Thank you, Haku." Zabuza walked over with Kakashi and asked, "Do you mean what you said about us having your protection?" Naruto chuckled and said, "Yeah. I was gonna wait until you came to Konoha to tell you though, but the little dipshit pissed me off." Looking at Gato's body, Naruto looked around and said, "Kakashi, you don't happen to have an up-to-date bingo book, do you?" Kakashi's eyes got big and pulled it out and said, "As a matter of fact, I do." Naruto took it and created 25 cage bunshin and had them go out through the Mist Ninja and the Merc. Kakashi asked, "What do you think your fiancés will do about having a new girl in your life?" Pervertedly while looking at Haku. Naruto said, "Really, I don't even think about it. I admit Haku is beautiful, but she's..." Haku said, "Mbi. Naruto is supportive of that, but he already has made a deal with his 3 fiancés and I doubt he would want another." Naruto was thinking, "Actually, I do like you and would make you a 4th, but I just don't want to have you and Anko team up against me, Aegean. Also, Temari and Kurenai don't like competition." A clone came over after about 10 minutes of cleaning up the mess of bodies and finding any bounties and said, "We got about 15 C-class total. The rest don't have any we know of. I need a sealing scroll." Naruto pulled one out and handed it to the clone, who went to the others. The next day, the bridge was finished and the group of 6 headed toward Konoha. Although it was more like a group of 10 because 4 clones carried Sasuke and his Harpai, who was knocked out, Aegean. Zabuza walks up toward Naruto and asked, "How exactly did you take all of them out so quick back there? I know you're good, but not that good." Naruto said, "Cage bunshins. I created 10 of them when the idiots covered the bridge and had my mist clone fight the 2 mist nins I had left. Since they could not see in the fog, the mercs went down quick. You're not the only one of the 7 left, Zabuza." Kakashi, who was walking just a little behind them, narrowed his eyes and listened to the talk. Naruto said, "Kisame is also still alive and will be coming to Konoha soon. Him and his partner Itachi have orders to kidnap me to take the Kyuubi." Zabuza said, "But didn't you already absorb the Kyuubi?" Naruto said, "Yes, but we are keeping it a secret so we can spring a trap for the guys who want to destroy all the hidden villages with the power of the demons. Kisame is one of that group." Kakashi's eyes widened when he heard that and wondered how Naruto knew this, and Naruto said, "I know you heard Kakashi, so join our conversation. The only 2 I don't want hearing are knocked out right now." Kakashi said, "Why don't you want them to know Naruto?" Naruto sighed and walked over, quick-drawed his sword and sliced a tree off to make a stump and sat down and looked at everyone and said, "Sakura will do anything for Sasuke." The tree climbing exercise showed that more than anything. After she done it, she watched him the entire time, never even tried to do any training after that. "Answer me this, Kakashi. What is Sasuke besides an Uchiha?" Kakashi looked at Naruto and said, "I don't." Naruto interrupted him, closed his eyes and said, "An Avenger. He will betray anyone to get the power to kill his brother. Even the Leaf Village. Do you know how to get the final level of the Sharingan like Itachi, Kakashi?" Kakashi narrowed his eyes and Naruto said, "You must feel sorrow for killing your best friend. That is what Sasuke will do to kill his brother." Kakashi said, "But Sasuke won't do that." Naruto said, "And that's why you won't remember." Opening his eyes, and Kakashi sees his eyes and faints. His eyes were no longer blue. They were red but had all different patterns of commas and lines and diamonds, as well as his veins on the side of them popped out. Naruto sighs, closing his eyes and changing them back to normal. He then went through some hand seals and said, "Memory implant jutsu," and taps Kakashi on the head. Zabuza said, "What did you do that for, Naruto, and what was that thing with your eyes?" Naruto said, "I did that so Kakashi won't remember what I said on the bridge or on the way here. Konoha does not need to know about me being as strong as I am right now because we have spies in the village because we are going to be attacked during the Chunin exams soon. He also has blind faith in the Uchiha because of his dead teammate that gave him that eye. I learned that jutsu from a Yamanko before and implanted a fake memory that I put in both the Harpy and the team over there already. As for the eye, it's a bloodline I created. You know how I told you about how I have Kyuubi? Since I have absorbed him all, I know how to create my own bloodline with it and gave myself a way to fight the Sharingan as well as a few other tricks. I call it the Trinnigan, let's go." And created a couple of cage bunshins to take Kakashi body as well. They continued on their way after that. When the gates of Konoha appeared, a team of ABNU appeared and was about to start something when Naruto said, You will not harm anyone under the protection of the Kazama clan. An Abianu in a sheep's mask asked, "Explain why since you are the only person not out right now." Naruto said Kakashi used his Sharingan to long training the Uchiha. Sakura thought the Uchiha died and passed out. Sasuke tried a jutsu Kakashi showed him and has chakra exhaustion, and these two are under my protection, and we would like to see the Hokage. The Hokage appeared then with Naruto in a swirl of flames and leaves and said, "Settle down. I have already talked to Naruto and they are free to enter." The Naruto talking to the Abianu went up in a puff of smoke. Zabuza chuckled and Haku giggled at the reactions the Abianu had. The Hokage said, "Follow me. And lead them to the tower." Zabuza and Haku, after explaining about themselves, and with help from Naruto and Jiraiya, were made members of Konoha. Zabuza as a special Jounin and Haku as a Chunin. She was going to start work at the hospital. They were both put under probation for 90 days with only half pay and a curfew with limited access to the village, but they agreed. They were given a place in the village and Team 7 was put in the hospital except for Naruto, who appeared in his room and passed out within minutes. Naruto was going to look for his fiancées, but Team 8 was on a mission to a village north of Konoha, and Anko was with an Abianu that were looking at a supposed increase in missing Nins near the border to Suna. Naruto team was given the rest of the week off because in 10 days the Chunin exams start. Zabuza and Haku both got a 2-bedroom apartment on the west side of town. Hyatt and Zabuza both became quick friends because of their love for Kenjutsu. Haku was given the same schedule as Shizune and was apprenticing under her even more to learn what Tsunade had not taught her. Jiraiya had to leave town to deliver the next volume of his book to his publishing company. That's his official excuse. The real reason is he asked Tsunade to marry him and ran before she realized what he said. Shizune, when not training Haku and working at the hospital, has been seen with a Sershin Chunin Academy instructor. Tsunade had, after figuring out what he had said, tried to find the pervert, but he was done gone. The third was trying to make her his successor, but she kept saying no. Rin has been spending time at her sister's house. Naruto was having a good day. It had been 5 days since him and his team got back. He has been doing some pranks on his team every day this week. He got up and walked toward the hospital to see his teammates. He snickered at the reaction he got when he brought them into the hospital. Flashback. Day 1. Naruto walked into the hospital with a passed-out Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi. A nurse ran up and asked, "What did you do to them, boy?" Naruto smiled and said, "Kakashi-sensei passed out from showing Sasuke how to use his Sharingan." Sakura passed out when Sasuke asked her to help him restore his clan, and Sasuke passed out when he was practicing a jutsu Kakashi showed him. Personally, I think it was funny when Sasuke asked Sakura to get something to help her get pregnant faster. "If you could, you might want to go ahead and give it to her." And he dropped all 3 in the floor of the hospital and left with a smirk. End flashback. Flashback day 2. The next day when he walked into the hospital, he hinged into a doctor he hated from his childhood and walked up to the nurse's desk and said, "Follow me," and started walking toward his teammate's room, the nurse right behind him. When he walked in, Kakashi was still passed out, but Sakura was awake. Sasuke was asleep. He had woke up earlier but did not want to deal with Sakura. The doctor walked up and said, "Sakura, your teammate when he dropped you off yesterday said something, and I was wondering if you could confirm it. Did Sasuke ask you to help him restore his clan?" Sakura blinked, trying to get the fog out of her brain, and she remembered a memory of that, but did not know if it was true, and she said, "Yeah, I remember that, but I thought it was a dream." The doctor nodded and walked to her chart and wrote in it and said, "Please give this to her." Showing the nurse the orders. He learned medical jargon from Tsunade and Shizune in previous lives. The nurse looked at it and paled and said, "Are you sure, sir? I mean, won't that?" The doctor cut her off and said, "That's the whole point. While you're at it, give this to the Uchiha also. Don't want to upset him, do we?" Writing in Sasuke chart and showing the nurse. The nurse paled Aegean and was about to say something when a civilian council member walked in and Naruto had to hide a smirk. The council member started to say something when the nurse said, "Thank goodness, maybe you can talk some sense into the doctor here." The council member looked at her and said, "What are you getting at, woman?" The nurse said, "The Uchiha asked his teammate to help him restore his clan while on the last mission, and the doctor here is wanting to give them fertilization drugs." The council member got a look on his face like he won the lotto and said, "Well, you heard him, get to it. I will inform the rest of the council," and ran out of the room. Naruto looked at the nurse and said, "Is that any way to act toward your superiors?" as he walked out the room and walked down the hall into an empty room, closing the door. Dropping the henge, he left the hospital by the window. End flashback. Flashback day 3. This time Naruto henged into another doctor he hated and walked up to the nurse's desk. The nurse from the previous day had called in sick today, so he said, "I need to check on the Uchiha and I need one of you to come with me." An old woman who could not properly see anything said, "I will help you, doctor," and followed him toward the room. Naruto stopped at the supply cabinet and got a bottle of medicine and walked into the room and asked, "How are you both feeling today?" Kakashi was asleep with his Ika book over his face. Sakura, who was still disoriented from some pain medicine, said, "A little lightheaded." The doctor picked up her chart and walked over to her and ran a basic scan on her and looked at her and smirked and wrote some more stuff in her chart and said, "Nurse, please make sure she gets these medicines added to her to help with the lightheadedness and to get ready faster." And handed it to the nurse, who looked at it through her glasses and then picked them up and looked before saying, "Right away, sir," and left the room to ask someone what it said. Once she was gone, he went to the medical cabinet in the room and got a needle and drew up some of the medicine he grabbed earlier and walked over to Sasuke and injected it into his fore. Sakura looked at him and asked, "What is that for?" The doctor said, "It's to help him with the pain. The previous doctor left a note telling me he had muscle spasms last night," and walked out the room thinking actually that shot is more than enough to make him sterile. "I don't care what they give him now." And he walked out the hospital. End flashback. Flashback day 4. Naruto walked into the hospital room as himself, except he had a long white robe like his father's on, but his hands were covered. He walked over and handed Kakashi the newest edition of Ika and said, "Perks of knowing the publisher," and walked over to Sasuke and said, "So bastard, what they feeding you?" And he dropped the fork off the table beside his bed. Sasuke was brooding and Naruto bent down to pick up the fork and slapped a tag under Sasuke's bed as he was standing up and said, "What, no answer?" and waited a few minutes. Sasuke just humped and looked out the window. Naruto sighed and walked toward Sakura and said, "How you feeling?" Sakura was starting to look frazzled and she said, "Leave. Now." Naruto sighed and said, "So much for teamwork," and walked out the room. He smirked as he walked by the nurse's station and the emergency button for his teammates were going off. The nurses ran down to see what was going on and saw Sasuke having muscle convulsions, and he heard a doctor say, "Restrain him so he can't hurt himself." End flashback. And now we have today. When Naruto walked into the room his teammates were in, he had to hold his hand over his mouth at the sight that he saw. Kakashi was passed out from a blood loss and his mask was red now and his book was on the floor. Sasuke was chained to the bed rails with hospital restraints, and apparently the drugs he prescribed for Sakura had finally taken effect, as she was currently giving the boy one hell of a rodeo, though she did have the decent to have herself covered with a sheet. A nurse walked in that Naruto did recognize as the nurse the council member talked to, and he asked her, "What did you give her?" The nurse was shocked at the sight and said, "The doctor's order and 4 of hormone modifiers to help someone get pregnant faster. It appears they also gave the Uchiha the male enhancement drugs also. They have been going at this for a while now." Naruto blinked and asked, "What do you mean?" Innocently. The nurse said, according to the nurse on the last shift, the girl had started around 2 in the morning. The Uchiha woke for only a few moments before passing out, and she has been going off and on ever since then. In fact, I don't think she has stopped to sleep yet. We had to start giving her 4 solutions of nutrients to keep her from dying. Naruto looked at her and said, "Then why don't you stop the hormone for or get her off of him?" The nurse said, "Can't. We were given strict orders from the council. Someone told them the Uchiha selected his first girl, and they want to start the clan restoration. In fact, I should not be telling you all of this, but the council is spreading the word already about it." Sakura mother could not be happier. Naruto said, "Then why don't you give them privacy and remove Kakashi-sensei?" The nurse said, "He was ordered to stay for their protection until they stop." Naruto snorted and said, "Thanks, I will give them some privacy." And he turned and walked out the room only to stop at the front desk as Shizen said, "Why do I think you had something to do with what's happening in your teammate's room?" Naruto smiled a foxy smile and said, "Don't know what you're talking about, Nei-chan, but you know the saying, make love not war," and ran out of the hospital to avoid the clipboard that impaled into the wall where he was. He was in a good mood until he suddenly felt a huge amount of Ki and knew only one person besides himself who could produce that much. He flamed Shushin to where he was feeling it, and sure enough there was Gaara standing looking at the sound Genins, and Gaara said, "Say that, Aegean." Daso said, "You heard us. Kill the Kazama kid or we will kill your sister." Naruto henged into an Abian U and jumped to the ground and said, "Look here, Genins. You are here for the Chunin exams and are not allowed to fight until your matches, or we will have to have you leave. Kin said, fine, we were just leaving. It's nice to see you, Agi and Temari. Gaara was about to kill them when he saw a Rasengan just barely hidden under the cloaked hand of the ABNU. He knew there were only 3 people who could do that jutsu. He watched them leave, and once they were gone, Naruto dropped his henge and said, "Are you all right?" Looking at the 3, Temari sighed and said, "Yes. We just arrived and were on our way to our hotel room when they stopped us." Naruto said, "Forget the hotel room. You are all staying at my place." As 2 more of him appeared and grabbed Gaara and Kankuro's shoulder, and they both flammed Shushin away, and Naruto picked Temari up bridal style and left in one also. When they got to his home, Tsunade was reading a scroll and looked up and smiled before going back to the scroll she was reading. Naruto sighed and said, "I wish I could kill that bastard right now." Tsunade stopped reading and said, "What's wrong?" Temari said, "We were heading toward our hotel room when 3 sound nins confronted us and said we either kill Naruto-kun or they will kill me." Tsunade clenched her fist and she looked at Naruto and said, "Are you ready?" Naruto snorted and said, "Yeep, they want to know what hit them and I already have my teammates preoccupied." Tsunade said, "So that was you that did that?" Naruto smiled a foxy grin and said, "Yeep, and the best part is the bastard can't get her pregnant." The 3 Sand Genins looked at each other and said, "What are you both talking about?" Kankuro asked. Naruto said, "I henged into different doctors I hated from my childhood and had them fill out hormone drugs to make Sakura. My pink-haired teammate's so horny she has to have sex to get it out of her system, and she is currently raping my other teammate who is her crush. I gave him also the same drugs, but I also gave him something to make him permanently sterile. On the way back from our previous mission, I implanted a memory in both of them and my sensei's head to where they all heard Sasuke ask Sakura to restore his clan with him, so they think it was real. When Sakura and Sasuke get it out of their system, they will be out for a week, and guess when that is going to be." Gaara smiled an evil smile and said, "During the Chunin exams." Tsunade did some hand seals and her looks changed and said, "You're so mean, Naruto Baka." As her appearance of Sakura. Jiraiya, who was at the stairs, did some signs also and said, "She's right, Dobe." As he appeared to be Sasuke. Naruto smiled and said, "Those may look like normal henges, but the only way they will come down is if they run out of chakra. I modified the henge Granny uses to make her look younger, even though she looks nice without it dodges a fist, and I also have an area in the forest set up with seals where once I activated a barrier appears and you can't shushin out or dig out or jump over. I set it up to trap Orochimaru himself." Gaara asked, "So where's the party?" Naruto said, "Right in the middle of our gates 1 mile in. Just shushin to my location and hide if you want to have some fun. I have markers all over the battlefield and no summons will be able to come in over the size of a small summon. No bosses because there is no room. If he tries to summon Manda, he will smack the barrier and hurt himself and dispel Manda, who will probably kill Orochimaru if he escapes. I just ask you to watch everyone, Gaara. You and me both can recover from anything he throws at us. The rest can't." Gaara nodded and said, "Just save me some fun." Naruto nodded and said, "Of course. Just don't forget to take out Kabuto afterwards." Kankuro sat his puppet on the ground and said, "Crow is ready for him." Temari started to polish her fan and let out an evil chakra as a dark aurora appeared around her, and everyone's sweat dropped and stepped back, and Gaara said, "Shikaku's scarred right now." The next few days blew by quickly. All the teams started to prepare, and finally the day of the exams arrived. Kakashi along with Sasuke and Sakura were currently in a safe house in the Hokage Mountain with 25 of the most trusted ABNU watching over them. Sasuke and Sakura were in a medical induced coma. Of course, Sakura would not be walking right for a few days anyways. Shizune's sweat dropped as she did a medical jutsu on her and Sasuke. Kakashi said, "Why are we doing this, Aegean?" Shizune said, "Orochimaru has infiltrated the exams, but we don't know who he is disquist, as so Tsunade and Jiraiya are also disquist, and you are here to protect your other 2 students in case he finds out." Kakashi sighs and reads his book. Note, until I say otherwise, Sasuke is actually Jiraiya and Sakura is Tsunade. Meanwhile, across the village, Team 7 walked into the academy and made it to the 2nd floor, and Sasuke looks at everyone and remembers the plan and said, "Drop the genjutsu, we are only on the 2nd floor," and starts walking through the crowd. Murmurs could be heard and a genin tried to punch him, but Sasuke just stepped back as Rock Lee intercepted the punch. A few minutes later, Rock Lee said, "I challenge you, Sasuke Uchiha, to a fight." Sasuke said no and turned and kept on walking. They walked into the room only for a scream of Sasuke-kin to pierce their ears. Ino grabbed onto Sasuke, who grabs her ass and her boobs at the exact moment she was on him. Sakura became enraged and Sasuke said, "Remember Sakura, I have to have more than one winch since I already slept with you." Giving one of his perverted grins as well as an evil grin at the same time, making Tsunade realize he is making the girl get over her crush with the bastard. Naruto sweat drops as Ino punches Sasuke and runs to her team crying, right into the arms of Choji, who is comforting her. Team 8 walks over and Kiba said, "So cuz, we finally gonna do this thing?" Naruto said, "Yeep, but let's wait until we have a crowd in the finals or semifinals to show our skills, so that way we are at our best." Kiba said, "Deal." Shino looked at Sakura and Sasuke and said, "Naruto, who are your—" Naruto looked dead into Shino's eyes and said, "My teammates for the exams. You know how many enemies we have here, so we don't want to release any important info." Shino nodded as a silver hair guy with glasses walked over and said, "You're right, Kazama-kun. That is some good advice. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Kabuto and I would like to help you all out with the test." Shikamaru said, "Troublesome. What do you mean?" Kabuto said, "I have info on everyone here, and if you want I could tell you, so that you can have an easier time." Niji walked over and said, "What do you have on him?" pointing toward Naruto. Kabuto shuffled his cards and said, "Well, let's see. Holy shit, this can't be right." Everyone looked at him and Lee said, "What?" Kabuto said, "Naruto Uzumaki Kazama, aka Sexy Blonde, aka the Second Flash of Death, aka the Music Man." Naruto interrupted him and said, "I know Mist gave me Sexy Blonde and IWA gave me the Second Flash of Death, but who gave me Music Man?" Kabuto looked at his card and said, "Actually that comes from the village in Rain Country you saved. You also just got the new name Butcher of Wave." Kiba asked, "What's with all the name cuz?" Kabuto said, "The name he got from Mist is when he defeated 1200 Mist Nin with one jutsu. He got the Second Flash of Death from IWA when he killed 25. Naruto interrupted and said, 40. Kabuto looked at him and said 40 of Fear Ninja while using his father's signature move, which also got him listed in the bingo book with something only his father had, a flea on sight order. He got the Music Man because the music he used when he defeated the 1200 Mist Nin's ADN. He got the Butcher of Wave from Mist when he killed 200 Merc and 10 Jounins. Naruto said, "I only killed 1 Jounin, the 200 Mercs and Thier Boscato, and we let 3 Jounins leave. Zabuza, Haku and Kakashi got the others. What else do you have on me?" Everyone was looking at him like he was crazy and Ino asked, "Did you really kill all those people, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Well, you can ask the IWA and Mist Nins that are running out the windows if it's true." Everyone turned to the sound of broken glass as 6 figures jumped out the window running. Everyone's sweat dropped and Ibiki appeared and said, "What did you do this time, Kazama?" Naruto pulled out his N-pod and said, "This." And hit play, and the sound of a car tire screech and glass breaking and Stone Cold's music started to play. Don't own the music or person known as Stone Cold. They are owned by someone else. As he walked to the front of the class with his black cloak on and his sword on his side. Ibiki sweat dropped and thought, "Why me?